Mhm. Hello, Mitzi. Hello, Mitzi. Earth calling Mitzi. Hello, Mitzi. Hello, Mitzi. Hello, Mitzi.
So is the audio working at all?
I'm here, Mitzi. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. I don't have any video. Do you have the video turned on yet?
I have my video turned off because it's going to be a two-person interview here the whole time between Mark Olson and Suzy Hansen. So I'm going to be just working in the background, and I'm actually going to be muting myself, so it's only the two speakers, and then I'll be tossing up a whole bunch of slides as we go along.
Oh, fun. Yeah, I just
Yeah,
talked to Susie yesterday.
excellent.
Yeah.
Were you trying to line her up for a little visit with you guys at in the Minnesota MUFON?
I don't know that we could afford to pay her to come, but we could do a Zoom, although nobody at Minnesota MUFON knows how to operate Zoom except for me.
that is unfortunate
Yeah.
because this is the way to fly, because we can literally reach into any part of the world. As long as they've got an internet connection, we can have a dialogue with them, and pictures too if we want.
Yeah, I
So
know. I've used this plenty of times. I've
yeah,
actually spoke at online conferences. I was one of the main speakers, so I know
excellent.
it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. And folks just have to get with the program, unless you have to do a training course or something, but they can't be fearful of this technology because it's here, and this is what we use to communicate nowadays.
Yeah, that's true. So did you guys get very much snow?
No, we were expecting this Colorado low that hit basically when was it? North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and something else. I had a weather warning out for Thursday morning last week, warning us that by Friday afternoon, lots of snow. It's going to be freezing rain, ice. We're looking at 4 inches of snow minimum, and it's going to be bad. Hunker down. Friday shows up, and without a word of a lie, blue sky, clear, and it was about -2 Celsius, which is just hovering below freezing point. Like, it was a warm day. Anything but what these guys said it was going to be.
Well, my hometown, just two hours north of me, had 22 inches of snow. They're still trying to bail out from 2 days
That
ago.
is crazy.
Yeah, I know. I know. No schools, no ambulance, no police, no nothing. Nobody could get anywhere.
Unless you had a snowmobile.
Yep, that's what we used to have when I was little. Snowmobiles. Even the
That is,
paramedics, even the
that,
paramedics and the police had snowmobiles. So I don't know why they don't have that now.
yeah, usually what happens here when we get a blizzard condition and the roads are essentially blocked, and literally the international airport is shut down.
Yep.
We either have Army coming out with their huge vehicles, 4, 6 wheeled things, and or the call goes out to local snowmobilers to move either people to hospitals, to do runs to a pharmacy for drugs for some of the elderly people. I mean, and then yeah, nobody yeah, and that usually will last a day and a half to 2 days before things get back to normal. So
Yeah.
that's how we handle emergency services over here.
Yeah. Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great that you could join us. I'm so happy. Looking forward to seeing you if you're going to come out here in April. You want to talk about that a bit?
Pardon?
Do you want to talk about your trip out here in April?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, I really like the Folkorama. They were so nice. Everybody the different camps we went to see were
Yeah.
so nice. They explained everything. They gave us as much food as we wanted, as much drinks that we wanted. I wasn't driving, so I didn't have to worry.
That is amazing. When I saw the schedule that you sent to me, I'm going, my God, this is like a military run operation. I don't understand any of this. If I miss trying to show up at one of these locations, if I miss by like 20 minutes, you guys are gone and on to something else. I
I
just
know.
and I had other stuff to do, so I couldn't return a message, and it killed me that you guys were really busy. I can't.
Oh,
I've never seen it. I've never been on a tour, so I don't know what it's like. So I guess that's pretty much standard.
well, these were ladies that were in their 70s and 80s that I traveled with, and they were used to traveling like that.
Whoa.
Yeah, really, really.
They do not sit around in one spot for like more than 45 minutes. 60 minutes is tops, and they are out moving something else. I mean,
Yeah.
I could not I could not do this. I literally, like, give me a spot and let me sit for 3 or 4 hours. All right. So finally we have Mark
Mark.
here.
Yep, I see Mark's on. Oh, I did see Mark's face.
Yeah, I got to unmute him here, I think. Can you see all this stuff that I'm doing on the screen?
Well, I can see people's names. I can see when people turn off their mics. My picture is kind of blurred. Otherwise, I really can't see a lot that's going on.
Okay,
Hello.
so
It's Mark Olson calling in.
Mark, how come we can't get your camera here?
Oh, because I got my tape on there.
Okay, that's better.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I got one too. I should take mine off too. There we go.
There's Mitzi, the Mitzi gal.
That's
Excellent.
why you couldn't see me. When you mentioned tape, Mark, hey, I do the same thing.
We all do.
Yeah.
We all do. Okay, so
How is everyone?
Good, good. I don't think I have
Brett,
the pleasure of
I don't see you.
that's right. You're not going to be seeing me because it's a two-person show between you and Susie. And all I'm going to do is just, as I showed you here, it was going to be two people on the screen side by side. Okay,
That's
gallery
fine.
view, and then periodically I'm going to be sharing a screen which will wipe out the images of you two, and it's just going to be you two up there, and you might hear my voice in the background, you might not, but again, Mark, if we have issues, Signal is what you use to get a hold of me.
Got it right beside me, Brad.
Okay, I have yet to get anything from Suzy Hansen.
I have.
Okay.
She's emailed me and she has the information.
Okay. I have sent her a couple messages on Signal and she hasn't responded, so hopefully she's going to be good to go.
Yeah, I would say don't try Signal, use emails because that's what she's responding on right now. I don't know if she has her Signal operational. I only talk to her via email.
The short answer is I believe she's got it up and running.
You're talking Signal?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me just see. Let's see if there's something there from her on Signal on my phone.
I sent her all that information via an email today. She responded back by email saying that she was going to get her done. And the only thing that I'm missing is a confirmation text from her, but I think she's up and running with that.
Unsecure. Okay. No, nothing on Signal from Susie, actually.
Okay.
Only from emails.
Okay. So can you, I've got a couple small bars up here. Sorry. I've got a group chat and I've got participants. Can you see these boxes on your screen on the right-hand side?
I see 4 boxes. I see Mitzi and myself, Beth Holtman, and Shirley Jones at this point.
Okay, so those are the 4 participants. So I'm going to have to figure out how to get rid of those off of the screen and only have speakers. No.
Is that important, Brett?
Yes, because we're recording this, Mark, for posterity. So
I see.
I only want you two.
Okay.
You don't want me.
Mitzi, we want
He's a fool.
you
That's all I can tell you. He's a fool.
But Mitzi was up here, Mark, back in August for Folklorama.
Yeah.
And she was on a tour, and it was crazy, the schedule that she had. There was just literally no time to get down to meet up with her. And let me see. The next thing was she's planning on coming down in April.
Yep.
We're gonna take her out to the Falcon Lake site. She's a gal who can handle horsies.
Yep.
So we're going to do that. And I also wanted to see whether or not we can get you over to a site that we need a provincial ranger to get us into, or a First Nations person, because it is a site that is
that Fox Creek?
I'm sorry, it's out there by Falcon Lake. It's a major site for ceremonies and what have you by Aboriginals going back the longest time. And
so just tell them that I'm a Sami elder.
Okay.
From the Arctic Circle of Finland.
I knew that you would.
And I'm a psychic. So.
You've got one heck of a background. I figured if we could throw in this one little site there for you, you would. I think you would enjoy it. Yep.
I probably might pick up on a lot of stuff there too.
I believe you will.
Yep.
Brad, is that the site with the stones, the place stones? Okay.
Yeah.
It's like a North American, what do they call the one in England? With all the place stones.
It's not a Stonehenge. It's I didn't get a chance to look it up on any of the on Google basically. So I don't know what else I can say except we're gonna dig it out and I'll see what I can do about that. Mitzi, if you can make it during the second week of April, then Tuesday evening you can join us in person right here in the Commons where I'm broadcasting from today.
Cool. You know, I have over 260,000 followers worldwide.
I know. When you told me that when you were just before Laughlin, I was going, holy mackerel, how does she do it?
And the crazy thing is we're in the middle of the desert and there's a country singer there, famous country singer.
I gotta tell you this. She goes to these bars. She's photographing people. She's dancing on the tables. This is my sort of gal right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand why.
She loves the blues. She hates rap crap stuff. Oh, I love you. I love you, Mitzi. I love you.
The blues, rock and roll, jazz. I'm not really a country fan, but guess what I sing? Country.
So let's go back to the Laughlin story, Mitzi.
Okay.
Oh, that's just someone else joining us. No problem.
Oh, Maurice.
Yes, Maurice.
He's got his mic turned off. Okay.
I can turn him back on for a moment.
Okay.
And Stacy?
Yeah, I can turn Stacy. I'm trying to unmute.
Stacy's got her mic off too.
There. Unmuted Stacy. Why can't I unmute? I'm having.
So I messaged Susie and she hasn't messaged me back. Oh, yes, she has. She says shortly. She's going to be on shortly.
Good.
Okay.
I've got some Phoenix people that are going to join in as well, Brad.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to unmute Maurice, but I can't.
He can do it himself.
Yeah.
No, I negated that.
Voice. Oh, there you're on. Maurice is on.
Maurice, say hello.
Hello.
Hi, Maurice. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, I've been pretty busy.
Good.
Yeah, I've read the book, actually. I started reading it last month. It was the one called The Dual Soul Connection.
Yeah, exactly.
This one?
Yep.
I remember a long time ago, we had a person that we were interviewing on a deathbed who said that she flew a spacecraft through the planet.
Pam Dupuy.
Yeah. And well, anyway, that's mentioned in here too.
Susie has flown through the Earth in a craft.
Mm-hmm.
She'll talk about it tonight.
Nice.
She was a headliner at the UFO Congress 2 years ago, and on technology, UFO technology, or pretty amazing. It was an hour and 45-minute presentation, and she was a standout. She'll be interesting tonight.
Wasn't that the same place that Mike Craig was at?
I don't know. There are quite a few. It's 5 days long, and there's a guest every an hour and 45 minutes.
Was it in Phoenix, Arizona?
Yeah, Phoenix.
See, Craig was my fiance, Craig Lang. He died out there.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Was that at the Congress?
Yeah.
Because there was a person that died at the Congress.
Yeah.
That was him. Oh,
Yep.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Was that at the McDowell Mountain Casino area?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Was that ET intervention?
That was an energy weapon, Mark.
That was Energy Weapon, yeah.
Yeah.
He,
See,
he had delivered his book via a memory stick about 5G and nanotechnology for warfare. And we never found the memory stick when I went down there. There's no copy of it. There's no copies on his computers at
wow.
the office. So, yeah.
There's some story that particular year, and actually, you'll hear from Susie tonight. She had a life threat in that particular that exact year, 2 years ago, in an elevator with a black ops kind of person,
Yep.
and she'll talk about it tonight. But also, Sandy Longo, an intuitive from New Jersey, now living in Pennsylvania, and her partner Steve. Went to a place near Benson, I think, Arizona, and were psychically attacked.
Mm-hmm.
Both got very, very sick. Sandy was sick for 3 months, and Steve actually passed away. So they all came to the Congress, and is that Susie?
I have not heard a beep, so
She's
Your
Susie's
mic,
muted.
yeah, your mic is off.
okay, just a minute. There's Susie.
Yeah, Susie, and her mic is muted. So
Okay, well, let me unmute Susie.
There we go.
hi, Susie.
You're live.
Hi, am I late because the time calculation said 2 o'clock?
Yeah, no, we're good. You're on fine.
Okay. I've been panicking.
No, don't panic.
Oh, that's
You're
right.
amongst. We're early, just trying to make sure everything's working fine. So
Okay,
I'm
hi,
thrilled
Lindsay.
that it is.
Hi, Susie.
Hi.
Midnight.
Okay, just adjust that camera. Is annoying me. No, not going to work. Never mind.
Okay, Susie, hi, it's Brad here from Winnipeg.
Hi, Brad.
I'm going to, I'm disguised as Betty Holtman for a whole bunch of different reasons, none of which are really serious. I'm going to stay in the background, and I'm going to, when we actually start doing this interview, there's only going to be 2 people on the screen, and that's going to be you and Mark.
Okay.
And then periodically, I'm going to pop up one of those images, one of those pictures that you gave us, that you sent us. So you'll have to guide me a little bit as to which image you want to be up there.
Okay. I can't remember which ones I sent you.
Oh, don't say that, girl.
That's all right. I can describe it, or you can guess. They're all pretty obvious, I think.
I'm going to try and follow an order going from, I guess, the ETs surrounding your bed, those glowing lights. I don't know whether that was back when you were a
that's
young
childhood,
child.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to try and do that timeline from childhood to perhaps playing around with the balls of light. That was one of those was going to be your future son. And try and follow some sort of timeline. So forgive me if I fall out of sequence. I'm doing the best I can.
That's quite all right. I should have made a note of what I sent you.
We get better every time we do this. So practice makes perfect.
Yep.
Hey, listen, I'm touching wood there, Brad, just right now, just you saying that. So don't make any statements until this thing's over.
If you only knew, Mark. If you only knew.
Yeah. Well, let's tell everybody now. We've had some very strange things submarine our actions and our abilities to put shows on. And especially when we have really important people like Susie here, and very like Susie. I never got any of your emails yesterday.
I know, isn't that
I got your
strange?
emails today.
Yep. Yeah, and emails that have been sent to me I've never received, and then I get emails from people saying, "Don't you even care? You haven't replied." I never received them. It's crazy.
It is. So it's all part of, maybe the information block or black ops or whatever the case may be. But we're going to work our way to get through this tonight. And I know we have Susie. I mean, this is well before we're going to get talking, because there's a lot of other people I know that are going to be coming to the show. But I remember having a very tearful moment with you in Phoenix when you and I met after your speech, and how powerful moved by I was by your information and your efforts at actually, putting this out to everyone, trying to help everyone awaken, which is such a wonderful thing. And everyone's growing from it. I do feel quite a movement abroad of people awakening and looking for more information. Our group is now 735 people in Winnipeg. So
amazing.
It is. And it's, we grow probably 25 every 4 months or so. So the more people come in, and it's due to people like yourselves, very interesting people, well known in the genre, that attract people to come and listen to what they have to say. And I know we have lots of interesting things to talk about tonight, so I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Mark. I look forward to it.
So we've got, we still have a half an hour, Brad. Did you want to work on getting that, getting everyone else muted, I guess, at some point, and then get this thing so we can get the two of us on the screen?
Yeah, I just would like you guys to keep on talking so I can get some sound levels working here in the room.
That's fine.
And Susie, have you ever managed to get that Signal app on your phone working?
I've got it on the phone, Brad, but it's just not, I couldn't connect to Mark at all. I don't know why that is.
Okay, because that is a secured and encrypted text message, as well as voice messages, or actually voice conversations. Okay. So I'll send you an invite, and then all you have to do is accept it, and you should be off. Did you get any of my text messages at all?
I've got emails from you, but no text messages.
Okay. No, there should be a whole stack of text messages there. So, just you two keep on chatting. I got to do some stuff in the room here. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Mitzi, why don't you? Mitzi is a medium, I understand. Yeah. And where are you from, Mitzi?
From Minnesota.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Whereabouts in Minnesota?
Right now, I'm presently living in Minneapolis, St. Paul area.
Oh, okay. 6 hours away from Winnipeg drive.
Yeah.
Not far.
It won't take long to come up and visit you guys in April.
We look forward to seeing you.
That's Susie right there. Ooh, Susie. Yeah.
Susie. Oh. And Susie, it's wonderful to see you again.
Thank you, Mitzi. Great to see you too.
It's a brave thing to come forward again.
It's a scary thing to come forward, but it's what I do, so I'm not going to stop doing it.
I've got dying to ask a whole bunch of questions because I did read your book.
Okay, hi. You're Morris?
Yes.
Hi, Morris.
Hi. Hey, how close are we to a disclosure?
That's a very good point. I don't think we're that close. And if by chance it did happen, I'd be extremely suspicious of a lot of it. I'm very suspicious of a lot of stuff that's coming out at the moment. And people ask me, what do you think of this person's material or that material? I sort of don't like to, talk about other people too much, but I'm reserving judgment, and put it that way. I like to sit back and watch and listen and wait. But I do rely heavily on what the Greys have told me, because I've seen that unfolding for the last 10 years. So nothing they've told me has proved to be incorrect so far.
In relation to Greys, have you ever come across a Grey called the Maitre, M-A-I-T-R-E?
No, I've actually never come across a grey that calls himself anything. They're always recognised by their consciousness or their personal frequency. It's the only way. I have personal nicknames for some of them that I've had since childhood, but I don't know them by names. I know them by their signature.
I see. I see that in your book you mentioned that you've come across several types of extraterrestrials. Are there such a thing as Alpha Centaurian ETs?
Not that I've met, not unless they never told me that that's where they're from.
Will you be talking about the first, second, and third waves tonight?
Oh, I'd like to, yes, because I think there's a lot of variations out there, and I've been getting a bit of stick lately actually about Dolores Cannon's information, which I believe is actually my information that she was given in 2007, and she produced a book in 2009. What's in her book is at the beginning of the book, I think page 51 or 151 is virtually what I said in my speech that she was given. And she's worked with it and produced a book, but her take on it is very different to mine. She's kind of got muddled up somewhere along the line, maybe because she didn't know enough about it. And there's a few other people out there at the moment who are putting forward all kinds of theories about different groups, star children and indigos, etc. And the information they're giving seems to morph and change from day to day. As someone else comes out with something, they kind of morph their information so that it fits with that, whereas my information is completely static. It's what it's always been, and it's not going to change.
Good.
We will, by the way, we will get into the 3 waves tonight. That's one of the topics that we will be discussing.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So whereabouts are you, Morris?
Me? I'm in Winnipeg. I'm an experiencer. I've seen several craft. I've had visitations myself, and I've been abducted a couple of times, maybe more. I don't remember all of them, but yeah, I've come close, for sure.
Maurice, don't you think that disclosure is already happening? Like, isn't it a sort of a soft disclosure? I mean, you hear and see either media or movies or release of NASA film of craft flying around their other aircraft. I mean, we're seeing all kinds of it now. So I think there is sort of a soft release going on right now. I don't think they'll ever come out and say the president appears on the Sunday night at 7 o'clock and addresses the nation. I don't think that's going to happen.
I think you'll know that it's pretty serious when the Pope and the United Nations and the presidents of various countries get together and start talking about it. But I do believe there'll be a lot of misinformation.
They've already been talking about it, but we just don't know about it.
I think, yes, I agree with that, Mitzi. I also think, like Mark said, disclosure has been happening for a very long time. As a sighting investigator in New Zealand, I know that every time there's a sighting, it's a form of disclosure. And even people who see Chinese lanterns and believe that they've seen a mothership have a transformation take place. And that's got to be a good thing in the long run. As long as they learn to identify a Chinese lantern after that, it will be good. But it brings them into the subject and opens them up to all kinds of information. So it's been happening a long time, and I smile to myself when I see a lot of the notoriety that particularly some of the US whistleblowers are being given, because there's a lot of people in the rest of the world who've been saying things for years, but nobody's listened. And I also think that having spoken in 8 countries outside of the States, I think that the States has a very different take and perception of a disclosure than possibly the rest of the world. Maybe the UK is more aligned with you, but the rest of us, we've just been trundling along with our sighting research and our contact research for years, and we've reached some slightly different conclusions to what the States has reached, simply because we have a different political system, and everything is very politicized and very militarized in the States, and it's not so much in other countries like New Zealand or Australia even.
Wow. On page 314, you say that the Greys are seeking further volunteer souls from within humanity itself.
Yeah.
Like those who are whose lifespans are near to completion. Do you mean like elderly people that are ready to die, or their mission is finished?
I think that. Sorry, Morris. I think that before we come here, we basically plan out our life. That's certainly what I know happened with me.
Yeah, me too.
And it kind of unfolds, and sometimes we go down blind alleys or up steep hills and we fall back down again. We get back on that same track and we deviate from it from time to time. But and I think that we've got a time where we want to complete something by, or we've agreed
there's a whole bunch of
move
people here.
out. And
right.
so it could be someone who's had a car
I
accident.
need a volunteer to go down. Hey, it's Grant.
Not just
so you
old
amused the
people
group.
leaving the planet.
Is this Desta?
So there's interference in the background.
Yeah.
I'll show
Brad? Hey, Brad?
you.
Brad?
Hi, Mark.
Can you mute your mic or
Yeah, Grant Cameron is over here right now. He made a special drop in here, believe it or not. So
I was expecting him to show up.
I wasn't expecting him to show up. I was expecting.
Yeah.
Oh, that guy.
I'm going to leave you people here for a minute. I got to work the main door, so I'll be back at 2 or 3 minutes from now.
Okay.
Okay.
Grant, if Grant wants to sit in and listen and have a say, tell him to sit down.
Oh, okay. I don't know. These guys can.
Anyways, so yeah, Susie, if you want to take a few minutes before we get started, we got not more than 15 minutes before if you want to take a few minutes to relax. We know we got a good connection and we know we're going to be able to start on time. So that's
Okay,
totally.
I might just go and get a drink then.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
We'll see you shortly.
All right.
Good evening.
Mike is on the right.
Hello, Grant.
Can you hear me?
Susie just went for a drink of water. Yeah. How are you doing, Grant? It's Mark.
Not too bad. Not too bad, Mark. We're having a little bit of trouble getting in, but we got some people here.
That's good.
What time is it in New Zealand?
She said around 2 o'clock. She just went for a drink of water, but it's just 2 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow. That's always crazy to say, but that's what it is.
So it's today and tomorrow.
We're here today and tomorrow at the same time. See, we're time traveling here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a question. How are you doing, Grant?
Good. I had a talk with your friend in Phoenix there.
Oh, did you? And how was that?
It was good. I'm trying to get her to go on a Skype thing or a Zoom thing. It's an interesting story with the language and all that kind of stuff. And
that a very interesting story. We had lunch together on that was Sunday, and her stories just continue to grow, and her abilities are morphing. So she's a very interesting woman to listen to.
That's for sure. And she came out of. Where'd you meet her at the Congress?
I did. I met her through one of my friends there introduced me, and then he said she speaks this light language that she doesn't even know what she's saying.
Yeah.
And she showed up one morning for the early morning experiencer sessions.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And we were there. This Dawn friend of mine and I were sitting having breakfast, and she showed up. And Dawn wanted to introduce me to her that she speaks his languages. So I asked her, so can you speak? Can you speak some of this language right now? She said, oh yeah, I can talk about it. And then she goes on. I said, tell Dawn something. So anyway, she spends 2 minutes talking a language I've never heard before, and going through this conversation, she has these facial expressions, and then tears strolling down her face.
Wow. And
it's quite emotional watching her talk and share this message. And I had recorded it with her permission. And I sent it to somebody that has crystal children that read light languages.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them had said to me, describing what she had said, is that some of the words that she used have no meaning. They only have feeling.
Wow.
Which I'd never heard before. I'd never heard anyone say a word doesn't have a meaning. It only has a feeling.
Wow.
And goes back to the time when her face was streaming with tears as she was talking about this, even though she didn't know what she was saying. So she's a very interesting woman. You should have her on your show, and I know it would be, people would find her very, very intriguing.
Yeah, yeah. There's actually I was contacted by a guy from Hollywood yesterday. He's looking for experiencer type people, but I think they probably want more of the dark stories, people terrified and stuff. But they'd be trying to recruit again.
Yeah, this enlightening stuff is for the birds.
For us old timers.
Yeah, we were just talking about, Morris had brought up, so when is disclosure happening? And I'm actually, now I won't even say, we're part of disclosure. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're telling the stories of reality that really are based, sounds like they're based in fiction, but they're closer to reality than what we've been told.
Yeah, we're sort of on the leading edge, I think.
Yeah, I love your story that was said at the UFO Congress one very early morning about when one of the people got up and complained about all the attention's being paid to the speakers. That was a great speech, and you straighten them up pretty quickly. We're in the Super Bowl, and we're on the field.
Yeah, but it doesn't sell as well as the other version.
No, it doesn't.
The other version is.
But the whole thing is, this is the most interesting thing in the world to me. I mean, I can't imagine another topic that is more interesting than the fields and the issues and the topics that we touch on.
Yeah,
I
agree.
Very, 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 very interesting.
Well, I appreciate what you're doing to support things here. I missed your guy, your business guy. I mean, that's why I called it Experiences Anonymous, so guys like I could come to the meeting. And then I hear you had this guy on with the campfire thing.
Oh yeah, he did show up finally. I had for 5 years. I asked him to come in, and he finally came in and talked. There may be somebody there that would even be able to sort of express what they felt about it. He was very informative. His story matched exactly what he had told me about 5 years ago. This is a guy that had 5 guys abducted at the same time at Falcon Lake, were taken up into craft and taken it. He actually described it as riding on a lawn chair in the middle of space with ETs. Wow. And you know what? He'd be a good guy for us to have lunch with someday, Grant. Actually, he can tell you a lot. I mean, he's really interesting. Because
he's the guy
downloaded with a whole bunch of information as well.
Wow. Yeah, because he was the guy who was underwater in the Caribbean when they pulled
him
out of the water. Yeah.
Yeah. He predicted. I had 7 guys in my office, and he spoke to all of us 2 weeks before the oil rig exploded in the Gulf of Mexico, and he described what was going to happen to the T, and then it happened. And he also is the guy that predicted the plane crash from Buenos Aires to France. Air France plane crash. Same guy. 2 weeks before it crashed.
Wow.
So, and he said he was told this to give him credibility.
That's an impressive story.
It is.
Yeah,
he's a really interesting.
Lunch sometime.
I might even for when we have lunch in December. I might even invite him then.
Invite him. See if he comes. Yeah, I'd really enjoy that.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. That was a good one. And he answered everyone's questions too. That was it was a fun night, that one.
Okay, I'll put the boss back in charge here.
Okay.
I don't know if he wants to be
in charge. We got Obi Kenobi 1 right here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go into gallery mode here so that...
I'm just going to get a drink of water, Brett.
Yeah, okay. Let me see. Okay, so Mitzi, so good to hear you, see you. But I'm going to have to mute you as we go along. But we're going to touch base before Christmas, one way or the other.
Okay,
whether we do another Zoom chat or whatever. So we're going to get our act in gear for next year. So.
Okay, sounds good, Brad.
Okay, so I'm going to mute everyone except
Mark.
Except Mark and Susie. So Maurice, yep, and Mary.
Look forward to talking to you, Mitzi, when you're in Winnipeg.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so gallery view.
So you're down in Phoenix, Mark?
Yes, I am. I come down for a couple of weeks. We have a condo down here, and I play
Okay.
golf most of the winter. So I'm lucky enough that I come back and forth, do some work, and then head back down.
Very nice.
Very lucky, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you planning on coming to North America in the next year or so? Have you got any plans?
Well, if someone invites me, that would be really good, but we'll see.
Yes.
I've applied for a few conferences, but there's been quite a deafening silence out there. So.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested in talking a little bit about Phoenix MUFON when you spoke, one of the keynote speakers at that particular conference, and the interesting things that happen, also scary, but when you start talking about technology, it seems that people listen very closely and are very concerned about what you're bringing. And so
I think so. I'm still working out in my own mind why that is. It's like, yeah.
Follow the money, follow the power, those type of things.
Yeah.
So if they lose control of power and money, which, there's some things on the move with cryptocurrency, and also the concept of 0 point energy, probably a reality already. It just, it's just not available to everybody.
That's right.
But we sure hope that does take place. I think it'd be good for the whole world. But
I think so. Yeah. I know there's stuff out there, and but it's all about the man in the street and whether or not he will benefit from it in the end. Yeah. Yeah.
Sadly, it's not about us. It's about them. So.
Yeah, that's right.
But things are going to change, obviously.
I believe
that's my take on it.
I think so. Yeah.
And part of what we do here and what you do, Susie, is how that all happens. And even a brick at a time, the little one step at a time to actually get to the point where people take note that, hey, the reality is quite different than what I was taught in school, or what some prof told me in university, or whatever the case may be. So we're certainly seeing an advancement.
I think so. There's a lot more people power around, but also I think, people learn through experience, and there's a lot more people having some quite negative and shocking experiences worldwide. And I think that's serving to really put people on their feet and get them thinking about their position and the position of their country or whatever.
Yes. No question. Well, how much time do we have here before we get started?
Couple of minutes or
so?
Yeah,
we got about 5 minutes. So, because one of the things we do say, we start at 7 o'clock sharp. There are people at the door that you either get in before 7 or you don't get in. So that's why Brad was probably downstairs. We need a fob to get in the front door. It's an apartment block, and we're on the second story.
Okay.
So
was Brad lost in the wilderness last time we were scheduled? What happened?
He had a meltdown with 2 computers, and he actually couldn't respond to me. And I was going, well, you're my technology guy, and I'm in Phoenix. I can't put the show on without you. So I couldn't get a hold of him.
Wow.
So that was just the sadness of sometimes. This is one of the realities. We have 3 people on our committee. Betty Holtman is, I'm not sure if she's going to join us tonight or not, but she's out of town as well. But and then Brad and myself. And I know Grant ran this thing for a number of years, Grant Cameron. And then he had a lot of things to do, and he's writing books and all the things that he's sort of pressing on, and the different issues that he sort of dabbles in, from consciousness to craft to music to all this. That's why I like getting together with him for lunch. I get the inside scoop of what all the new things that he's actually trying to deal with. So that's really a lot of fun. But this whole thing has been it's actually difficult to put on. It looks like everyone gets around and talks. The easiest thing in the world, the thing is people of like minds getting together to talk and to share information, to grow, to educate. It's been an enlightening thing for me, and I know a lot of the people in the room right now back in Winnipeg. We don't charge a dime for this. People come in, and all of this put on for nothing, and we thank you, because you don't get paid anything for doing this, but we know how important all this is, and we all know that this is the most important and most interesting issue in the universe as we know it on this earth, and a lot of people are waking up to it.
Yep, it's the big game changer, and so many people don't even know it exists and are not even interested in the subject. So there's going to be some grand wake-up calls eventually for some people.
Yes. Sooner the better for me.
Yep.
We'll see. So I got myself a water and a little break. A couple of minutes yet.
So all of your audience, Mark, in Winnipeg? I know, Bitsy, you're not, are you? No.
We're actually expanding. I have people going to join us tonight from Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix MUFON. Did you ever speak at Phoenix MUFON?
I did, yes, yeah.
Yeah. So a number of people that I've got to know up there now, I've given them access to Zoom, so they'll be joining us tonight. So that's why our membership is growing, because it's not just Winnipeg. It's because they're always, like, for instance, you saw Phoenix MUFON, there's 75 to 100 people that show up every month to that particular meeting. And the people that put that on are Stacy and are just incredible people, and Jim, incredible people and bring people in from all over the world to that particular. It's a world-class event, and I love going whenever I'm in town. I'm going next Saturday, so I'm looking forward to that.
I loved speaking to that group. It was really great.
Yeah, it is, and there are so many connected people
to talk to. Yeah.
Yeah. You feel good in the room, and the messages, like I've watched, they have one every month, the second Saturday or something. And I can't think of one that I didn't enjoy out of all that I'm seeing. And they actually have videotapes that you can take with you and put it on your computer and watch it if you didn't get a chance to see it.
I'm actually booked in there to speak mid-year for Phoenix MUFON, but I've got to find some other groups to speak to make the trip worthwhile.
Good. I sure hope you can do that.
Yeah.
So, and I have a
long
place
way
in
from New Zealand, Mark.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, my sister's in Australia, and I know that's a long ways from New Zealand, but traveling around the world to go to one event that's 2 hours long, that's a bit extreme.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if Brad is back yet. We're ready to start. He's got to start the recording at his end, so as soon as Brad's back, we'll get started. Okay. Brad, by any chance, are you around? Anyone in the room that can hear us? Is Brad in the room? You have to turn your mute off your mic before you could talk to us, by the way. That's the one problem we don't have, is we don't have an image from Betty Holtman, who is Brad, because I don't know if he's sitting in front of his computer or not at this point. See, like, we got one person in 5 jobs there in Winnipeg. He's opening the doors, letting people in, getting him on the elevators, getting him upstairs. I'm not sure if he's pouring any drinks, but that might be going on as well. Brad's a hell of a guy.
Yeah, it sure is.
Come on, Brad.
It's a very hot, humid day here in New Zealand today. It's fine, but we've just had a storm pass through, so the humidity level today is pretty high now that the sun's come out.
So it's 7 o'clock in Winnipeg. What time is it there right now?
It's just on 2 o'clock in the
2
afternoon.
o'clock. Okay. Wow. Tomorrow, we're time traveling here.
That's right. Yes.
Well, that's almost a good fit in with our group here.
Yep. I have a friend who lives on what's called East Cape in New Zealand, our easternmost point, and he's got a small motor camp there. So his selling point is that he's the easternmost motor camp in the world, because we're the first to see the sun. Accordingly.
Hey, Maurice, can you hold up the book to your light or to your camera? Yeah. So there's the book. The books that I brought back to my group and shared them with those people. I know that I'm not sure, Maurice, is that yours or one of the ones that I handed out? Good. And I know everyone we share a lot of books with our group, and everyone is a voracious reader to all this stuff, learning more as you go along.
Great.
Let me just see if, Brad, are you there? You're muted if you are. Would like to get started? Is anyone in the room can go down and get Brad? That would be good.
Okay, Mark.
There we are. Okay.
We are good to go here. So
do you want to get your recording started?
Yeah, we are working. That's working right now as well, Mark. So you are good to go as our host this evening. So take it away, Mark.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the Winnipeg's UFO researchers and UFO group. We meet on the second Tuesday now of every month. The group is based in Winnipeg, but we have guests from all over the world that are joining us. And we do have a very special guest today, which I'll get into in a few minutes. As I said, we typically have met in the past on the first first Tuesday of the month, and we're switching it as of January to the second Tuesday of the month, just for everybody that's in the audience and will be listening to this, because we'll allow people access to our shows. If you register on our meetup site, then you can get the access to our Zoom telecasts that we have. I'd like to just for a minute describe our group. Our group is basically a group of interested and experiencers of the UFO genre, and that as I described it in the past, using sort of school, we have people that are generally interested in UFOs, and then we have people that have had experiences throughout their life, including contact with ETs and many other types of experiences, which we'll talk to our guest tonight about. But and I apologize to some of the people in the room where this is their first meeting, when they're still thinking that seeing a UFO is a really incredible thing, which it really is. But there's so many different topics this leads to, and I'm excited to get on to introducing our guest. Our guest is from New Zealand, Suzy Hansen, who is an experiencer, an author, an incredible soul that is spending her time for free, putting out the message to everyone and helping shed light on different subjects, providing information, which helps us all grow and get better at what we do, and also humanity actually advancing to a new place. And Suzy's a big part of that. I'd like to welcome Suzy Hanson from New Zealand. Suzy, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's really nice to be here and to see some faces on the screen and know that there's some more listening in. It's very, very good to be here and have the opportunity to talk to you all.
We really appreciate your time, and I know asking for 2 hours of your time, and I'm not sure we'll talk until you're finished, and we'll try and cut it off at 2 hours. There may be questions at the end, but there's a number of topics that we want to talk about. I'd like to start, Suzy, just having you just do a Coles Notes version of sort of your experience, where it started. You don't have to go into too a depth, but to give people an idea a little bit about you and how you got into doing what you're doing right now.
Okay, well, starting with what I did in my real life, I was a primary and secondary school teacher for about 28 years, and also a grief counsellor, and served on the management committee of a large grief counselling organisation here in the city I live in. My experiences started in childhood, but at that time, of course, being a kid, I didn't associate them with aliens, which was a word which wasn't even used back then. These were just some spirit kind of things in my mind that came to my room at night, and it wasn't until I had a real catalyst situation of my car being lifted off the ground at the age of 20 and experiencing missing time that I was shaken and pushed into, I guess, researching other people who'd had some similar experiences, which were few and far between in New Zealand back in the 70s, but also starting to document and research UFO sightings, because in the region of New Zealand I was living in then, there had actually been some very notable UFO sightings even at a local aerodrome. And so I began seeking out people who'd had A, experiences, or B, UFO sightings, and sometimes it turned out to be both. I was only 20 years old and a young teacher then, and it took me quite a few years, well into my 30s, before I really began to understand what was happening in my own life and to assimilate it into my life. And I went from there. I guess I spoke publicly about it in 1997, and I've been speaking publicly about it ever since. So that's it in a nutshell, I guess. I have my own organisation here in New Zealand, which investigates UFO sightings. It's a nationwide research group with a small staff, and so we have an archive of over 10,500 sightings in New Zealand going back to the 1800s.
How active is the UFO group in New Zealand? Are there lots of sightings? Is it an issue or active area?
Well, there are certain active areas in New Zealand, and I do speak about this in my sighting speeches to do with our seismic and volcanic activity. We get a lot of UFO activity around some of our large events in that respect. But I guess we follow the same sort of pattern. I've been in this is my 45th year. And so I think we follow the same kind of pattern that overseas countries experience, where we have roughly a 7-year cycle where you have the pits on the graph where nothing much is happening, and then you reach a peak, and it covers 7 years to do this. And that seems to be what researchers overseas have agreed to is happening. So we have had quite a lot of phenomenal sightings in New Zealand, including the Kaikoura Light sightings. We don't know why that is, other than the fact that we're a very remote country. It's a great place to hide out if you wanted to hide out and base yourself somewhere. It would be the ideal place.
When you talk about your own experiences, Susie, does it include visits by ETs, and has that happened throughout your life? I mean, after your 20, if your first experiences, or had it happen when you're young? So, and do they continue on today?
Yeah. It happened right from childhood, but it wasn't till I was around 20 and I had this experience on a lonely country road that I began to tie it all together and realize that what I had seen in my room communicating with me, and the kinds of dream-like memories, and I'll put dream in inverted commas because they weren't dreams, they were memories. I began to tie that together in my 20s, and by the time I was in my 30s, the experiences of contact had increased greatly. That was like during the late 80s and 90s in New Zealand, and there wasn't much literature in New Zealand at that time until we started getting books by John Mack and Bud Hopkins, David Jacobs, etc. So it was quite a lonely path that I was treading. I'd only met a small amount of people in New Zealand who'd had similar experiences. And yes, the experiences continue to today, but just as you might have the technology in a car that changes over the decades, so you look back to the car you traveled in when you were a child, it's different to the one you travel in now. And so it is with the contact experiences. They have changed quite dramatically over the years. And I believe that this is because with working with people my age, I'm in my early 60s now, you have had these experiences so many times that you become very conversant with what you're there for, why you're there, what you're going to be doing, and how to behave. You know, what is expected of you and how to use the technology. And so the transition is much easier, and very often you go in your soul state as a ball of light, and the days of the whole body going on board the craft has changed quite dramatically. In your case, was it ever physical? In my case, yes. Yeah. Okay. Yes, in my case. So, as a child, it was physical right through my 20s and 30s, and into the 40s and early 50s. But since then, it's more of a knowing and distinct memories of having conversations, and knowing that not necessarily the body had gone, that my consciousness was there on board the craft.
This is one of the most interesting worlds. I mean, my sightings happened, which caused me to be totally enthralled with the genre of what we're talking about. But it has grown outside seeing craft. It's gone into different areas. Now, when I think about your book, the dual soul connection, when you in your bio you provide this, and if you give me a second here, I wouldn't mind reading this one paragraph of what it's about, especially for people in the room that maybe haven't read it. So your amazing book, Dual Soul Connection, which by the way is on Amazon and on Barnes and Noble. You can buy it there. So that would be something that we'd love for all of you. And I know you'd enjoy the book immensely. But it addresses the aspects of spirituality, consciousness, metaphysics, and the alien culture, along with scientific concepts of physics and advanced organic conscious technology, all within the framework of alien contact, highlighting our interconnection with a wide universal family. I mean, that statement alone is part of disclosure. It's a big part of it. This book that you wrote, can you just start with the idea of, was it something you were led to do? Is it something that, maybe just tell us a little bit how that sort of started, and then we get into the book a bit.
Yeah, it was definitely something I was led to do. And I think from childhood, I always knew I was going to write a book. And as a teacher, I know that lots of little girls in particular say in childhood that they're going to write a book. And so when I said to my mother, I'm going to write a book, she just went, oh, yes, okay. But I definitely knew I was going to write a book. And as I got older, by the time I was in my late teenage years, I understood what spirituality was. Not that it was talked about much in those days. It was more religion and church and Christianity in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. But I understood from an early age the difference between religion and spirituality. And I knew I was going to write a book. It was just a matter of when. And then as the time got closer, I began feeling this huge urgency, and I had a number of researchers trying to push me to release material. One of them did release my material without my permission, and I've always regretted that, because some of my important material that I wanted the opportunity to describe was put out there ahead of me. And that was a shame, but
yes.
Anyway, I wrote the book, and I got a lot of guidance throughout the writing of the book and working with Dr. Schild, Rudy, and at one point when I'd written it, I said to Rudy, now I have to cut it back. And he said, why? Don't cut it back. I said, yes, I have to cut it back. That's my guidance. The book is too big, it's too repetitive. I've recorded everything faithfully, but now I need to turn it into the right format. And he kind of pleaded with me not to cut it back. I actually cut out 80,000 words, which is a book in itself. I still have all of that. Much of it deals with things which I'm going to put in the next book. But yes, I got a lot of guidance to write the book. And I was told to mention certain things in the book, not go into it too deeply or the book would be too big, but mention it so that later on I can talk about it. It can be incorporated in my speech, but it is recorded briefly in the book of reference to these things, so that later on people cannot say, oh, you've just started talking about that now. No, it's back there in the book. So to me, there are some hidden and concealed things in the book that I will bring out in time.
Hidden things within the book?
Yes.
Different background meanings or information behind it?
There's reference to things which I did not enlarge on, which in time, when I feel it's the right time, I will enlarge on it. Because the Greys have taught me for all my life that timing is of the essence. Timing is everything in terms of this subject and the release of material. And the readiness is the other word, people's readiness to absorb certain material and not be completely thrown or turned away by it.
And do you feel this next book, do you feel that you'll be bringing that information out? Is that a long ways away right now? Do you feel people are becoming more adept to absorb this information, accept it, go with it?
I think so. You know, I've talked to a few close friends who've said, "Oh, don't put that in there. Don't put that in there." But it's not a case of I'll leave this out because it might have, you know, it might be, I might be ridiculed. It's part of the story. It's part of my story and other people's story. Therefore, it has to be told. It's just a matter of telling it the right way, so that people can understand and hopefully accept some of the concepts that experiences like me have in our background.
We, just on this subject, from my experience at least, when people as I mentioned earlier in the start of the show here, where we have people that are like in kindergarten, maybe when they're 16, they saw a craft, or maybe they just have a general interest in UFOs. And then as you go along, you develop into different segments. You know, Grant Cameron's in the crowd tonight at the office talking about consciousness, which is something I didn't even connect the two. You know, I always thought, I saw a craft, that's interesting, I'd like to see another one. Then once you start talking about consciousness, there wasn't that great interest to see another craft. It was, you sort of moved to a different level. And this is sort of the piecemeal of the education and advancing people, what you're doing as a part of letting people know information and advancing that. So yeah, I guess from my, it's not formed in a question, but it's part of the advancement of souls as they go through it. And seeing craft is, you know, one of the interesting things, or having a general interest at the start is only the first phase of a multitude of different phases.
That's right. And for me, consciousness runs through everything in my book, from the telepathy shared with the ETs to using the technology, which is consciousness equipped, put it that way, to many of the experiences, to the form that you take on a craft sometimes, to the tasks that you were given. It's all consciousness oriented. And even in some speeches I've been doing in Australia recently on sightings, I have brought in this consciousness aspect in terms of I've selected sightings where the witnesses saw an entity as well and had a communication take place. So then the whole arena around that experience of the craft, what they sensed from the craft, what happened to them with the craft in close proximity, etc., is all about consciousness. And so those are the most recent ones I've been doing in an attempt to try to tie together the nuts and bolts sightings and the actual witnessing of seeing an entity and having that communication take place. And many people have described to me over the last 4 decades the consciousness aspect of a sighting. So I do get quite annoyed when I hear some contact researchers saying sightings are done and dusted. No, they are not. They're an absolute beautiful example of consciousness and how it affects our consciousness and where that is leading to.
Yes, I totally agree. We had a woman named Pam Dupuy that's passed away last September that actually flew craft. She came onto our show and talked about flying to a crystal city in the middle of the universe is one of the most interesting places she'd ever been. And I spent many hours with Pam talking about her flying. She talked about craft that was made for her, part biological, part metallic, and that she would fly it through consciousness. So now, just leading into this next stage, I remember at the UFO Congress, you'd mentioned that you had flown a craft, or first of all, you were in a craft, but I believe, were you asked to fly a craft? And tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I was actually taken on board to start with a very large craft that was manned by greys and other entities, but it was what you might call a grey craft. It was massive, and the hangar area itself was massive. And I was taken into the hangar area and told that I was going to be given a flight experience, that there were a number of reasons for this. It was something they did with humans they'd selected out periodically. It was one of the reasons was to test how we could react to the conscious technology, where your reactions need to be quick and you need to be totally connected to that craft in order to be able to do it. So I was approached walking across the hangar area were some human-looking people, very tall and very slim. And they were what you call entities or beings from somewhere. I don't know I've had lots of people suggest to me, oh, they're from our future or whatever, but they were very phenomenally graceful human beings, and they did not look like greys. They looked like us, but more refined versions, if I can put it that way, and particularly with their consciousness and telepathy. And it was actually them working with the greys. And they took me on board their small scout ship, and off we went. And I was taken from New Zealand because it was dark, and ended up in a place where I can only assume it was North America or Scandinavia, somewhere in the Northern Hemisphere, Canada perhaps, where there were golden and orange and red blazing hillsides of autumn leaves, such as we don't have in New Zealand. Wow. And when the window screen opened up, there was this vista of autumn leaves on hillsides. And I was given 2 versions of how to fly the craft. The first one was using a manual lever that popped up out of the console. And I was given the reasons why you would use this manual lever within the Earth's atmosphere, because we have certain energy fields and electromagnetic disturbances and weather disturbances, etc., that sometimes affect the flight of the craft, and they would use these with these small light craft in those situations. And I considered that I'd probably be best at doing that because I've flown a glider, I drive a car, and I thought, well, that's more akin to what I'm used to, I'll be able to do that. But I was also shown how and allowed to fly it using consciousness, and I actually found that that was easier, surprisingly. And they explained to me, well, if you're using your hand to move the lever manually, then you're using brain messages down to muscles, ligaments, tendons, etc. It's taking much longer than just using the brain to instruct the craft. So that was quite a surprising thing, that the consciousness way of doing it was the way that I wanted to go. That was a very phenomenal experience, and I describe it in detail in the book. So that was a great experience. And I think one of the things that struck me about that experience was being taken way out into the Earth's atmosphere. I don't know whether I went beyond it or just to the very exterior, but I could see the curvature of the planet, and I could feel and see the Earth receding in such a way that all the negative, devastating, horrible environmental issues, etc., disappeared from view. And first you saw land masses and sea, and then you saw this planet in all its glory. And I considered that to be very similar to what Edgar Mitchell described as an epiphany that he experienced when he saw our blue planet from space. It had a similar effect on me.
Well, I guess it would. Sounds incredible. Did you, when you're talking about when you started flying with your consciousness, did it happen instinctively? Did it happen easily? Was it a quick type of thing? Or did it take you half an hour to get used to doing it? Tell us just a little bit about that.
Well, having had the benefit from childhood of using their technology, which requires the use of consciousness, it wasn't a big step, but it was a step in terms of that I was in something that was moving, rather than in a room in their craft operating something with flipping a screen or whatever. This was very different in that I was in a machine. So it took quite a few minutes for him to instruct me. He allowed me to try it out. And I can remember there was a female, the woman next to me, a female entity or being. She was a scientist, and she was manning the like a 3D standout image of the craft in its environment. So you saw a model of the craft basically in 3D form standing out from the screen with the surrounding terrain in like a topography. And so I could look at that, and I could feel what the craft was doing, and I had to learn to instruct the craft telepathically or through consciousness. So, and I described this in the book, it wasn't so much as saying move forward, it was more like taking yourself, your consciousness, moving forward. So there's a real difference there. You're not instructing, you're going with something with your consciousness. and it took some minutes to do that. At one point, I know I tilted the craft. I was practicing the oscillating movement, and I oscillated too far. But it was okay. It was all under control, and I was successful in doing it. That was the main thing, and that was the test for the day, was to see how I could do in those circumstances.
And you got your license.
I did.
So I understand right after that. So do you think a part of your taken early in your life when you were younger, and then them teaching you this sense of consciousness, and I know Pam had mentioned to me that her brother and her were taken to a craft and they would levitate a ball. And she feels those early lessons were taught to them, leading to exactly what you just described to me, for her to fly a craft, and essentially now you have sort of followed along on that same line. You feel that is what the early training was about?
Absolutely. Controlling the mind is the main thing that they're teaching you from childhood. And what I call, and what this lady Pam has described, I call that the playroom situation, where you're taken and you mix with other mixed species and greys and ET children and some humans. And you learn very quickly alongside them. You're feeling, you feel their telepathy, you feel their consciousness. It's not just something that you experience on a mental basis. It's holistic to the body and all of the senses. And like Pam, we were taught to levitate things. In my book, I've got an image of children sitting around, and there are a whole lot of shapes in the air. And so we would practice moving those shapes, intertwining them, or forming formations, taking them apart, etc. And it's all about being able to manufacture something out of, manufacture this matter and manipulate it from early childhood. They also taught me mind control. I also describe in the book how they can pluck something out of your mind as a child that you're used to or you're familiar with, and then they utilize it. So in my childhood, I used to go to a surf beach for holidays with my family, and there were a lot of sharks there. So I was always afraid of sharks, didn't like to swim with my dog because apparently they're attracted to dogs. So we were always very watchful when we were swimming in New Zealand open ocean. And so I remember in childhood, one of the things they did was they did a mindset or an illusion in my mind of me being able to see family members and friends in the ocean floating, and there was a shark coming towards them. And the exercise for that evening was for me to use the power of my mind to, in this imagery that they could produce and subject you to, is to turn that shark away from my family, which I was able to do. So this was all training the mind to extreme focus, to the extent where you can change a situation with the power of your mind. And this, you know, this has gone on throughout my life. I don't generally talk about it publicly to my friends. There's a lot of my friends here in New Zealand don't really know what I get up to, because when I have mentioned it, it's just too confronting. So this whole other side of me that they don't get to know, but of course my friends in the UFO field do, and it's safe to talk about it there. And that's a little warning to experiencers. Be very careful who you open up to, because it can be quite damaging.
Yes, that's very true. My question, a follow-up question to this is, did you feel the craft had its own consciousness? Was it a living craft? Or
yes, you know, people talk about the craft being alive, materially or metallically, if you can put it that way. I don't know about it being alive, but it is imbued with the consciousness. And I know that running through so many objects and structure of the craft is this, it's like it's wired, if I can put it that way, if I can use that terminology. It's wired with consciousness. So when you are tapping into that craft in that situation where I was flying it, I was tapping into all of the knowledge of the craft. So I'm tapping into the database. I'm also tapping into the consciousness of the humans that were in, the human-like entities in the craft with me. And then there are other forms of consciousness that the craft is imbued with, which I also describe as being like the big brain. And I describe this in depth in the 2 chapters I write called the Test Part 1 and the Test Part 2, where everything in the craft is attached to these forms of consciousness and forms of information and knowledge that you can tap into. So if you want to call that the life force of the craft, yes, that's the life force of the craft, is knowledge.
Mm. So the leaders on the ship that you were on, were they human-like? Were they, how could you describe them?
Are you talking about that particular small craft that
Yes.
I flew, or large?
Yes.
They were human-like, but they were very tall and very thin, and their features were very angular. But they did not speak. They communicated telepathically, but they were very human-like, but very long limbs and very long fingers. So I can only describe them as an advanced model of humanity.
Maybe a future version of us for many years in the future that are coming back. For the people that are in the crowd that are sort of at the early stages, the concept of consciousness and different dimensional beings and different types of beings, there are many, correct? I mean, this is, I have a real connection to the mantis and the grays and many different types of grays, I'm told. What can you tell us about that? The different types of living beings that are coming to Earth. I mean, obviously the universe has, I'm sure, many, many types of beings, but ones that you're familiar with.
There's a multitude of beings that are described by people out there. I have had contact with the greys and a form of the greys and a lot of their mixed species that they have mixed with. I have seen mantis on board craft. I have seen human-like people, just what I've described on craft. I've seen humans, us. I've seen humans on board craft for long periods of time and in the hangars and studying craft, etc. I have never seen a reptilian that I have memory or am aware of. I have seen the greys transform into what people might call a light being, a form of light that they told me they use in other dimensions and for specific reasons. So I know that they are all working together on the agenda that I describe in my book. There may well be other agendas with other entities from other places, but I can only speak for what I am familiar with. So when I hear there's quite a lot of competitiveness that I've sensed over the years in the contact field, where experiencers say, well, I've had experiences with the light beings, but you've had experiences with the greys, and the greys are negative. No, some greys may be negative, but the vast majority that people talk about are not. And I think this competitiveness has to go because, as I've said, I've seen greys transform into a light being, a light form. I've seen them disintegrate into a shower of colour. So the ways in which they can present themselves are varied and many.
So just and I don't want to beat this subject up. I mean, it's a very interesting one to almost anyone that's going to watch this that has any interest in this genre. But the concept of orbs, are these what you're talking about? The light beings, they turn themselves into light. And I've seen a large orb that's 20 feet wide and looked like gasoline on water, and I was stunned when I saw it. But so, what are orbs as you know it?
Well, I think we mistakenly use the orb to encompass a whole lot of different things, actually. Mm-hmm. So I can describe an orb of light, which is a spirit light. I was born with mediumship skills. I don't necessarily like to call myself a medium because it carries connotations for many people today. It's just a natural thing that I've done all my life. And so I have seen spirit orbs all my life, and I know that I've been aware that I've transformed into a ball of light to go on board a craft, a large ball of light. So that could be called, both of those could be called orbs, but they're quite different in that respect. I have seen the greys transform into a smallish ball of light about the size of a cricket ball, and they've appeared to me in my room like that, and then they've just like filtered like that and taken on their grey form. And they're standing in front of me, and then they will disintegrate into that ball of light again. That's an orb of light, but it's a different one again. So I've seen craft. My husband and I saw what we believe would have been a craft surrounded by a sphere of light coming down our valley a couple of months ago, and then did a right angle turn right out in front of our house and went out to sea. So that's an orb of light, but it's likely to have contained a metallic craft. So I have also seen orbs of light or spirit lights come towards me as an 8-year-old child on a craft, and they represented souls. And they represented the souls of people who had already incarnated or would incarnate later on, who were going to be an important part of my life. And I was being shown those souls in early childhood so that I would have some recognition of their frequency or their energy signature when I met them. So Dr. Schild was one of them. I saw a video of him talking about black holes and quasars one day, and I thought, hell, I know that man. I really love that man. I have to contact him. It took me several years before I was able to. And of course, he contributed to my book. Another one that I saw as an 8-year-old and recognized as an adult was my former colleague in UFOCS NZ, who was a pilot and air traffic controller, who worked with me in UFOCS NZ for 20 years. And the day that I met him, it was like, oh, I love you. I know you, you know. You're going to be a part of my life. And we were the closest ever friends for 20 years. And he did a great deal to further the subject in New Zealand. So these are the kinds of things that we experience. These are orbs, but they are different kinds of orbs.
Yes. I mean, it's an amazing description of what you just talked about and how that all that is connected. We, Congress, and I met many people there, maybe drawn together at a special time for a special reason. And immediately I had connections with people that I felt, you know, I have lots of good friends, but these are people that I felt totally connected to the moment I met them. So it's a very interesting topic. And, but, you know, we have only 2 hours to talk, and we're going to get onto a lot of different topics. And I want to get into the concept that one that you and I both want to get into, and you talk about the 3 waves. And I want you, just for, there are people that, like I say, are beginners that don't have any idea what we're talking about. Can you describe the 3 waves, and let's get into a little more in-depth discussion about the 3 waves.
Okay, the 3 waves concept or agenda was given to me, was first mooted with me as an 8-year-old on craft, and I write about this in my book in a chapter in particular called Meeting the Soul of My Future Son. And as an 8-year-old, I had described to me a program and an agenda that I was a part of, that I was born into, that I had chosen to be born into, and that I would be in for the rest of my life. And that there's thousands or millions of people on the earth who are a part of it also, and that this agenda will carry on into the future until such time as we've reached a state of readiness to meet ET face-to-face and publicly on this planet. So I was told as an 8-year-old, and then again later on in that year, just before I turned 9, and then over and over throughout the years, I found that the programs I was part of on board the craft, these multi-layered, multitasking programs where you are slotted into your skill area, and that's where you are trained. You receive the kind of training that you might need to complete an important task on a planet that is part of raising our consciousness, part of our evolution, part of our movement towards meeting our cosmic neighbors and attaining that readiness that I've talked about. So the 3 waves are 3 groups of souls who, over a period of time, starting back in the late 1800s, have incarnated on the planet and are still incarnating on the planet and will do for some time to complete this agenda. And each of those waves is broken into 2 parts. And it's quite a complex idea. It took me some time to assimilate all of this, and quite a few years to understand what I was a part of and how I should react to this and what I could do with it. Because it's not all about what you're taught on a craft, it's about what you implement in your life in order to be able to carry out the tasks that lie ahead of you. And if you don't put that effort in, you'll fall by the wayside. You may be dragged back onto the path again, but how successful you will be depends on one word that was repeated over and over on the craft telepathically, and that is commitment. Your commitment to the task, your commitment to the planet and to humanity. That was the word that was drummed into me, if I can put it that way, for many, many years. So the first wave, they started incarnating very early on, and they were the enlighteners and the innovators. So the innovators were some of the early psychics and some of the early people who got into the paranormal and began reviving the paranormal in society. And that went on everywhere around the world, from Britain to Russia to wherever. There was this upsurge of people being interested again in mediumship, and even things like Ouija boards and table rapping, which I don't necessarily approve of, but that was part of it. And then you've got the enlighteners, who I believe, this is what I have been told by the Greys, are what some people might call the Star Kids or the Indigo Kids or whatever. But they are a very small group compared to the second and third waves. And this is where what I say varies quite considerably to what some contact researchers are out there saying. They are making a big screenplay of the Star Kids and the Indigo Kids and the New Humans, etc. When in fact they are, yes, they are part of this first wave. They've come to show us what we are capable of doing. But their task, in fact, is actually quite small compared to the second and third waves. But they are there to let people see what we as humans are capable of. When you see some of these people who can do quite extraordinary things, telepathically or telekinesis, etc., those are those people who are coming to enlighten us on what we are capable of. Now, the second part of that first wave, these enlighteners are still coming into the planet. They're still being born. So you're seeing children with extraordinary talents. But I'd just like to say here that with the technology that children are being exposed to today, and the mindsets that are developing, the more openness, it is a natural thing that you are going to have children who have some extraordinary talents. So I'm not saying that all children with extraordinary talents are necessary Star Kids, Indigos, or New Humans. I think it's dangerous to do that. I think they're just kids who have been brought up in a forward society. The second wave is the wave that I belong to, and that at the moment is by far the biggest. And this is the experiencers, abductees, early contactees, who have been taken on board craft, have met ET face to face, and who have been exposed to the technology, to the elevation of consciousness, to learning on the craft, etc. So that's actually a finite group, a very, very large finite group. And we are here to not only bring out the contact experiences and bring out what we know and understand, but also to assist the third wave, which is formed by some of our children. Not all of our children, but some of them. So that I look at the early abductees, for example. Many of them suffered through the media, suffered greatly. Some of them have had negative experiences, some have had positive experiences, and they were crucified very much by the media and by the press, etc. Experiencers have had it a little easier, and we're a little bit more free and easy about what we talk about and how we talk about it, I think. We've kind of broken away from the abductee group because we want to acknowledge that our experiences have been positive. And by no way am I negating or minimizing anyone who's had negative experiences, because it's part of my work with communicatorlink.com, which I established some years ago to work with all people who've had contact. So I respect all forms of contact. But the second wave is broken up into the pioneers, which I consider to be the early contactees and the abductees. and the communicators. And I'm in the communicator group. The communicator group is a smaller part of that second wave, and we're the ones who perhaps take on a more public face, speak more publicly, write books or make documentaries or whatever, but feel that we have got the commitment and the ability to do that. And it can be very daunting. You can have some bad things happen to you and awful things said about you. But those who do this have this huge commitment and the willingness to do it at a soul level, and have been trained on board craft to do it. And I describe in my book how we were taught to imbue things we say in speeches with a mannerism or a timbre to the voice, or just to emit a particular energy that will trigger some people and get people to think differently. And that's what the aim of this communicator, being a communicator, is. Now, the third wave is what the Greys called the implementers. And the third wave are all younger people, naturally, because they're the children of people like myself and people older than me and somewhat younger than me. The second wave is all pretty much in their late 40s through to, 100 years of age or whatever. We're the older age group, and our children are the third wave. And once again, that's broken into what I call a fourth intellect, which my eldest son belongs to. And the fourth intellect is a specific group of children of experiencers, abductees, who've had a vast training on board craft. It makes my training, which I think is quite extensive, pale into insignificance. Theirs has been much greater. They have all the skills that the first wave enlighteners, the star kids and that can exhibit. They have all of those skills, but they keep them under wraps, and they have learnt to make it a part of their being. So instead of externalizing it and being able to show you, I can do this, I can do that, it is internalized in a way that it comes out to people who meet them as just wisdom, that they are quite wise young people, they are capable, they're highly intelligent, they have great analytical skills that they've been trained to a high extent with by the Greys. And these are the ones who are going to be the game changers of the future. At the moment, most of them at the present are there's a big bulk of them in their 30s. Some of them are older and younger, but that's where the bulk of them are in their 30s. They're getting themselves into positions now of power in a positive sense, of influence in a positive sense in their chosen careers or in the chosen work that they do. And they will be using their analytical skills and their great compassion and their understanding of consciousness and telepathy and the use of energy. They'll be using that in a very holistic way to make changes, because at this point in time, we need changes to all of our institutions, our medical systems, our education systems, our law systems, our transport systems, what we are doing with food and feeding the planet, etc. All of those large institutions and groups that affect humanity and our life on a daily basis must change as new technology is coming in. And these young people know how to make those changes and bring people on board and along with them. They're highly compassionate, they're highly psychic, but it just becomes a part of the way they operate. It's nothing showy or overt in any way. The Greys referred to them as the concealed ones, not because they're hidden for any negative sense, but because they are kept under wraps until the time is right. So you won't see them out there overtly like star kids. You will see them standing out in every form of work that they may be in. They will stand out and they will be selected to be leaders, and they will be the ones to make the changes that take us far into the future. I think that's probably a good little synopsis there.
Wow. That's all I can say. That's absolutely amazing. Very exciting to actually hear, and it gives me hope that things are about to change in a very positive way with these kind of special humans on Earth at this time to actually help a direction and to move us forward into a different world. I mean, I'm almost lost for words after that. I mean, I was watching people's faces as you were talking and how connected they were with your message. It's really fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
I'd just like to share one more little thing there, Mark, and that is
Go ahead.
when I was on a craft and I was being told about these children, I was shown an image. I said, well, what will they face in the future? Because they must be going to face some adversity. They must be going to face, terrific barriers where people don't want to change institutions, don't want to change the way things have been. And he just went like this with his hand, and in the air and like a holographic form with his mind, he was projecting an image. And he showed this young man on a stage or a podium giving a speech, and the audience was angry. They were desperate. They were angry and afraid. They were worried. They were in a real state of despondency, and this young man just stood there and he talked to them and he calmed them, and his whole demeanor calmed them down, and he talked sense, basic, down-to-earth, wise sense, but he was a young man. And I was thinking, wow, that's amazing. And he said, this will be your son. So I have great hope, although I do believe we're going to go through some horrific earth changes as we are already. I still have great hope that these young people who've been trained to a high degree are going to take us through. I have great faith that they will have that ability. And when I speak overseas, be it Scandinavia, UK, or the States or wherever, I meet young people in that age group, immediately I know this is a third waver. And, they're so identifiable to me because I've worked with and seen so many of them on craft.
And your gifts as well, being able to intuitively know that these people are third wavers. And so have you had many with you and have discussions and get into what they're doing or what they're planning, or are they still too young? They're still too young to make that transition into being leaders, or is it just starting to happen right now from that perspective?
It is just starting to happen now, and there's two areas of your question there, Mark, that I'd like to address. The first one is I was told to watch out for signs, if I can put it that way, which for several years now, for the last 5 years, I've been talking about. I'm seeing the signs. So in 2016, I think it was, or 15, I was in Europe going down. I'd been speaking in Scandinavia, and I was going down through Italy with my husband, and we saw the immigrants coming up who had poured into Italy from Africa, etc. And that was only the beginning. Now we see millions of people on the move worldwide. South America heading up to North America. We see it in many different parts of the world. It's still happening in Africa and right through Europe. And the Greys said, when you see people who have nowhere to go physically, geographically, spiritually, mentally, nowhere to go, and they are trying to get to a destination with great difficulty, that's a warning sign that chaos is going to follow. Well, we're seeing that already, and we were shown images on a craft on that particular night of cities burning and people fighting in the streets. We're seeing that worldwide. Huge rafts of people, nowhere to go, people hungry, governments being overturned, all sorts of things of that variety happening, along with your earth changes. So I think we are going to go through some difficulties before the third wave can really come into their own. But I'm keeping in contact with a huge amount of third wavers worldwide now that I've met in my travels. And it's a big task keeping in touch and knowing what they're doing and what they're up to and where they're at, and we discuss problems, etc. And these people are ready. They are skilled, they're in good positions, and they are ready to go. And I think they will get the help when it's needed. But really, the biggest indicator of how fast this is going to happen is how fast we improve our spirituality on the planet, because we can't evolve and start using the kind of technology that's going to be available to us that we are developing if we don't develop our compassion and our spirituality worldwide. We are what the Greys called retrograde in spirituality, and nothing much is going to happen until that changes. And if that means that we have to hit rock bottom as a civilization or as individual countries, then that's what will happen. If that's what is going to force change, that's what will happen. We will have to be forced to find a better way than what we are doing now, and that's when the third wavers will be ready to step into the breach and have the knowledge and the education and the wisdom to be able to find solutions to the huge problems that we are creating.
Now, the control people in this world right now, obviously, would they be anti-third waivers because they lose their control through people like this, or do the third waivers just naturally come into positions of power?
Well, I've said the Greys called the third wavers the concealed ones, and that's because many of the third wavers, believe it or not, most of them do not even know at this point in time that they have had contact. They've got a parent who's had contact who may or may not have spoken about it or faced up to it, but many of them don't even know. They have no memory whatsoever of being on the craft. Some of them have snippets of memory. But the people like myself, in the second wave, the communicators, our job is going to be when the shit hits the fan, if you want to put it that way, and all of these third wavers wake up to the fact that they've had this contact and they've got a big jolly job to do, they're going to be looking for someone to say, help me through understanding this and help me through it really quickly. And as I say in my book, there will be some who will just slip into it quite easily, be able to accept it, think, wow, that's great, now I can get on with my work, I know why I'm here. There'll be those who will have a little bit more difficulty within their family or community, whatever, in fitting into that. And the reason that they have to be kept in this state of not knowing what they've been up to in their sleep state all this time is that they cannot be publicly known. They cannot be exposed, as many of the star kids, crystal kids are. You see them all over the internet performing this and performing that. We can't do that with these ones, although they could be taken out. We have to have them in a state of ignorance, if you want to put it that way, achieving greatly in their world. But when the time comes, they will be able to slip into that mode very quickly, and there will be a fuller understanding of why they're here. Some of them will need help with that. And the Greys have always called them the concealed ones. And when I look back in retrospect at the whole agenda and how it has unfolded for me in my life and my understanding, it is utterly amazing. It is multi-tiered, multi-layered, and involves so many people in humanity who don't yet understand what they've been trained to do. And many of them have what I call thought seeds or implanted information. When they hit a certain problem, obstacle, situation, bang, that will open up, and suddenly they will be equipped with knowing what to do. So, you know, again, I have great hope that humanity will have this unfolding quite quickly. When we reach a crucial stage, there'll be like a mass unfolding in people's minds of shivers. I've got to do this. I've got to change that. This is what I have to do, and I have to do it now. We're going to come to that tipping point.
And how, you know, obviously they're concealed, as you've mentioned a few times. How do we support people like this? Because obviously our world always will need people like this to change, and change is never easy in any respect. So how can we help?
Well, basically, you're looking at keeping an eye out for younger people who are coming into the fore. So if I can use New Zealand as an example, we have a 37-year-old Prime Minister. Now, I'm not saying that she's a third waver who's been on a craft, but I am saying that there are more and more younger people. We have a 17-year-old in New Zealand running for our parliament. So we have more and more young people speaking out about the situation on the planet, and because it affects their future, and some of those will be third waivers. So if we feel that there their concerns are justified, their actions are righteous and justified, then we should be supporting them. Whether they are third wavers or not, there will be some of them amongst them.
Be interesting to watch for that. And like I say, stay tuned and follow and help when that becomes evident that that's what we're facing and what we're dealing with. All very, very interesting, Susie. Anything else you want to sort of deal with on that vein of the three waves? How long do you see the three waves taking to work its way through our system? Is this a 50-year issue? Is this a decade or a century?
The greys, as I said, they will reach into your mind and they'll grab out an analogy that you understand. And in this case, when they talked about the timing and the readiness, those words kept coming up again. And out of my mind, they plucked the idea of a rubber band. So they said on some days, the rubber band, in terms of our progress spiritually and our evolution and the changes we're making on the planet, we can pull it right out here. We're doing really well. And on other days, we've dropped the ball. We've let the end of the rubber band go and it's sprung back here again, or it might only be that long the next day. So it's really about what every single one of us is doing every day in this respect, with our own evolution of consciousness and our own spirituality and our own commitment to the planet that we live on. Without the planet, we are nothing. We are a spirit, a soul that can go elsewhere, but our home planet may not be livable. So really it's about readiness and timing and what we all do in the interim. Because the situation, it's like a puzzle all coming together like this and locking into place. The cogs of the wheel, and it can't happen. The third wave can't get moving. The second wavers can't get moving on helping the third wave until everything is in alignment. And that's up to us as collectively on the planet.
Let's talk for a minute on spirituality, because I'm sure everyone, there may be 7 billion different concepts of spirituality in our consciousness. So how do you describe consciousness, spirituality as it reflects to what we're talking about?
Well, hey, Mark, I'm a Kiwi, so, we're kind of down-to-earth people. And so I always try to keep it really basic and practical. To me, spirituality is compassion and having empathy and doing the best that you possibly can in every situation. That's not always possible. We are human, we are fallible. But really, it's about finding ways in your life that you can contribute in the best possible way to bettering your life and those in your family and those around you. And we get that flow-on effect and the ripple effect going out. And what we do can affect many people around us, not just the people we know and love, but many others that we come across inconsequentially each day. So I like to keep it basic, and that is trying to lead a good life and having compassion for other people and consideration and manners and all those good old-fashioned values that we often attribute to religion and Christianity and other religions, but really they are basic tenets of life that we should be trying to adhere to in our life. And if we did, it would probably be a much better place in quite a short space of time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you don't mind, we're going to move on to another topic because we're going to be running out of time. I can see quickly if we don't move on. One of the interesting things you'd mentioned to me in one of the emails that you'd sent me, messages from the Greys from decades ago, which have effect today.
Yeah, so
they're evident today, I should say.
Yeah. So one of them is what I mentioned before of people having nowhere to go and huge rafts of people adrift. And but there's also been messages given about the way that we operate, the way that the readiness, as I've explained, on the planet. Also to be watching, not to become aligned with any big UFO groups or cult-like groups, not to become a follower. you know, I've been asked to join this group and that group, and I'm not talking about Facebook, I'm talking about other kinds of groups that have particular dogmas or particular hard and fast opinions on certain things. And the Greys always told us to stay away from that. The time will come when they will be infiltrated and taken down. And I'm beginning to see that happening now with some groups around the world that I'm aware of. And not to become ingrained in doctrines and set opinions on things. Even my own material, you know, I read through a chapter of my book occasionally, and I have like a deeper understanding of what I perceived at that time that I wrote the book. And they told me that this would happen, and that then when I next give a speech, I bring that added dimension into it, and it builds on it and builds on it. And so I think we have to be very careful of following particular researchers who have a hard and fast idea about, you know, star kids or whatever, or a hard and fast idea about sightings, etc. And we have to be open to new progress and deeper understanding in all areas.
You're talking open-mindedness, but also with so much disinformation out there,
critical thinking.
You almost have to allow your own soul to guide you through those issues, allow you to talk to your inner self to sort of deal with some of those things.
Yes, and I despair sometimes as a sighting investigator that, you know, I have people send me an image of what I know to be a Chinese lantern because of its characteristics. But sometimes if you say to people, look, that's a lens flare or that's a Chinese lantern, this is why, here's some links you can go to and have a look, etc. You get a lot of abuse because those people want it to be a mothership. And this is a kind of fixed, inflexible thinking that I'm talking about. It's, you know, it can be quite a minefield out there, and it's the same in amongst experiencers. I think the time is coming when more and more experiencers are actually getting to know each other better and being a support to each other. And years ago, they showed me on the craft a 3D image of the planet, and there were little silver lights here and there, and they said, oh, these are people you're going to get to know over the years. And they said, so let's watch, and it increased and increased, and then lines started appearing, lines of communication started appearing, and there was layer upon layer upon layer of little silver lights and silver lines connecting them all into this huge matrix around the planet. So that's the point we're seeing now, is more and more people who've had experiences aligning with each other and finding the common ground that binds us rather than the things that separate us.
Wow. Yes, well said. When we get into some other topics that were sort of in the notes of the new email that you sent, we started getting into the relevance of how this affects the, and just give me 1 second here, I'll look at the notes as I go through this. I was so indulged in what you were saying, it was just all wonderful. But yeah. We'll edit this out later, but so when we start thinking of the issues that I had talked to you about before, for instance, the different types of things and what it takes for someone like yourself to come forward. And I'm saying this because there are people that are coming forward, the second waivers, as you refer to them, and the difficulties that you have, you know, obviously being ridiculed by people, all those type of things, but also you reflected one of the issues that happened to you at the Phoenix UFO Congress in an elevator. One thing is it something that you're willing to talk about? Because I think it's something people need to understand, the types of things that you experience and how important it is for people to sort of say, this is not a simple, easy type of thing. There are things that are quite serious. So do you mind talking about something like that?
No, that's fine. The communicator group in the second wave that I belong to, I think we're the ones who are exposed to some intimidation. Certainly in New Zealand, as a sighting investigator, I have been exposed to intimidation. I've had my house watched, strange things happening to my phone, things happening to my emails, which is still happening today.
Mhm.
My house watched, the neighbours have witnessed it, so it's not just me being paranoid. So I had a year and a half of anonymous phone calls. When I first spoke at the old UFO Congress in Laughlin in 1999, I was threatened by two people who David Morehouse, the remote viewer, said were agents that he was familiar with. So I was threatened by them and told to go home. They knew about my family. They made threats to my family and told me to go home and not talk about any of these things again. So, of course, I had to have a bit of a conference with my family over that. But a couple of days after that had happened, my husband and I did one day's sightseeing before we left the States. And we rented a car, and there was a strange man in the car in the front with the lady from the rental company. And I write about this in my book. And I was in a real state thinking, well, I've got to go home and I'll never be able to talk about these things again. I've just got started and I've been snuffed out. And this guy, when the lady got out of the car, he turned around. He was an odd man with very large china blue eyes and wispy white hair. He had a turtleneck sweater on a really hot Nevada day. And he turned around and his mouth never moved. And he said to me telepathically, they always look after their own. And then he got out of the car, went into the building, walked through the door. My husband and I raced after him to ask him, what did you mean by that? And he was nowhere to be seen. We investigated the toilets and all of the little side rooms and asked people if a man had come through the door. And they said, no, not until you came through after that lady, who was the lady driving the vehicle. She behaved as if she didn't even know he was in the car. I was beginning to think she was really rude to him, but maybe she didn't know he was there. I don't know. So
Right.
I came home and carried on. But certainly at the Congress last year, I was approaching a lift down a corridor and I saw a rather strange looking woman at the far end by the lift. She was dressed oddly. She had sunglasses on and what was clearly a fake wig. She looked at me and I couldn't see her eyes, but she rushed into the lift with me and stood by the buttons. We went down one floor and she must have been counting because just a split second before the door opened, she sprayed what I thought was perfume over her shoulder. And it was, I thought, oh, she's missed her neck and it's gone over the shoulder. It went all over me, my face, my neck, my hair, everywhere. And then she got out of the lift and the door, I pressed the button, the door shut. And I went down to the next floor. So for all of that time, I was stuck in a lift with this, what was a very sweet, overly sweet smell, so sweet and so awful that it made me want to instantly vomit. I was actually retching in the lift. So I didn't think anything of it. I just thought that was cheap perfume. But the evening of the banquet, which was after I had spoken, I spoke at 9 in the morning, and that evening I came out of the doors of the banquet. There was no one in the hall except two guys who'd been intimidating to me for several days from the time I arrived. They sat behind me at the experiencer sessions. They would not be a part of anything. But they tagged me around a bit. And on that night, I was on crutches because I had a compressed disc in my spine. And as I set off down the corridor to my room, they came behind me, pushing my shoulders and threatening me, asking me what I knew about, what else I knew about alien technology, because of course that was the speech that I gave on the alien technology I've seen and used, that I'm now seeing coming out in our own technology. They threatened me, they told me to go to a particular website and see what could be done to people like me with the technology. They told me to go home and not talk about this again. So I flew to LA later that day and then home to New Zealand. By the time I got home to New Zealand, I was feeling very ill And the following day I was rushed to hospital and I nearly died that night because I had a bacterial skin infection, a bacterial lung infection, which nearly took me out, and a bacterial blood infection. So if you put all those 3 bacterial infections together, you don't stand much of a chance of living. But a strange intervention occurred in that when I was really going down in the middle of the night, they would realize that there was an American expert on infectious diseases who happened to be in Tauranga, my little tiny city in faraway New Zealand. She had been giving some lectures in Auckland and she'd travelled down to Tauranga for a night or 2. And they found where she was, and she very kindly came into the hospital and saved my life by putting me on some, what she called the bazooka of all antibiotics. After some hours, I began to pull through. So I personally believe someone tried to take me out because of my knowledge of alien technology, and someone didn't want me to be saying something that I was saying in my speech. Someone does not want the public to know certain things that I have knowledge of. I cannot think of any other reason, and I can see Mitzi nodding her head, and I know that what happened to me also happened to Mitzi's fiance, Craig, who passed away on the Wednesday night at the Congress and was also sprayed in the lift by a woman and described a sickly sweet substance that made him want to vomit. So put 2 and 2 together, guys. It's a dangerous thing to be speaking out, and since then all conference invites to me have gone dead.
Yes, and then that's something you and I have talked about, and I've actually reached out to some of the people who run some of these things and put on special shows that present the kind of concepts you're talking about, you know, and with no take on these kind of, even though they're the most interesting things you could possibly imagine. May that be mind controlling these people or whatever the case may be. There's something very strange with that about not getting this message out. And that's why we're so happy to have you on and be able to record this and share it with a whole bunch of other things. As a matter of fact, we see us sending it out to all 700 of our members in recorded form that they can watch it on their own time. And Mitzi had explained to me the loss of her fiance, which, you know, incredibly sad. I was actually at that particular event, and I also had a friend with her special other passed away. They both became very sick, and the other was a let's just say very gifted kind of individual that ended up actually passing away as well from that went to that conference. So yeah, there's some crazy things that can happen from that.
That's right, Mark and Mitzi, and of course it's easy to explain it away as the flu or, you know, some desert fever or something, but it wasn't. It was very specific actions taken against me, and I was told to come home and not speak about these things again. And they said that we can get you. We can get you from close up, we can get you afar, his exact words were. We can get you from one of our craft, and we can get you from a satellite.
Right.
So,
I guess one of the other...
people have to realize that all the people who I believe are going to come forward talking about their experiences, please talk to your family and friends. Think very carefully about how much further public you go than that.
Yes.
Family and friends is a good way to start those ripples going out, but you know, just depends on what you've been trained to do and what your commitment is. My commitment runs very deep.
Very interestingly, I understand Mitzi and yourself are medium type of skill sets that I have, which you also could use to help defend yourself, look into issues that could be affecting your family, or should you be going to this event or that type of thing. So these gifts that they've given you are there to help you for those type of things. And maybe one of the reasons why you aren't being invited to some of these things, that, you know, things like this right now are a lot more effective, because we may reach 100 people today, but our recordings and stuff that we send out will be thousands and thousands of people, and they will forward it on. Hey, listen, did you hear this? And have you ever heard of this before? And people will start sharing that stuff, and we see that as part of the role that we play. And I see that your abilities are going to be a big help. And I see Mitzi also shaking in the same way, that this is sort of the skill set that you require to fend off these type of things. And hopefully the creator is on your side to actually help keep this thing going. And I'm a big believer in that we're guided by higher sources. So from my perspective.
And I remember the words from 1999, they look after their own, and I consider myself one of theirs.
Yes.
So I'll just keep doing my work.
Yes, it's meant to be. Eternal beings, I understand, that's a long time. So, you do things in this lifetime, you do things in the next lifetime, you present the right messages, and your issues that you're trying to bring forward to help all humanity. Basically, the spirituality concepts that you talked about earlier is all what you're doing. And I can't see how that's bad, no matter, we have infinite times to come back and reincarnate and do all sorts of different things. So to me, this is a very interesting concept as we, talked on many subjects today. And I'd just like to say thank you to all of you that are gifted. I mean, I've been very fortunate to talk to 14 near-death experiencers that I can only say that these are incredible gifts to me, to have them talk about their experiences after they leave their body and go to a different place, types of feelings they've had. And of the 14 people, not one of them felt as scared of death, not one of them. Matter of fact, 80% of them didn't want to come back in the first place. And, but, we have our chores and things to do here. And they were coming back because they weren't finished their work here. So right. I'd like to thank all of you for what you do and help all of us. You're here to help us, and we recognize that. And we'd like to give thanks to that, especially after the U.S. Thanksgiving. Canadians had it last month, but they just finished their Thanksgiving just the last couple of days here. So thank you. So if we could, just to warn the people back home in Winnipeg, if you wouldn't mind, Susie, being able to answer questions, because a lot of people will, sure. This has been a lot of stuff we've talked about. There may be lots of questions, and I would like to get to the people, because it's not about me, and it's about our group and learning and growing. So the people at home, Brad, if you can have people lined up to ask questions of Susie in the next couple of minutes, we'll just carry on, and then maybe we'll get that and take you off your muted microphone. So,
okay, Mark, if I could just jump in a moment here. If I could get people to type in some of their questions on the Zoom chat so that I can go through them and raise them up, at least then I'll know who wants to ask a question, and I can unmute them as we go through here. It'll make my life a lot easier trying to manage this as a whole, because right now we've got 22, 23 people online. So thank you. Use the Zoom chat there, folks. Thanks.
Great. Do you have, Brad, do you have people in the audience that want to ask questions? Are they raising their hands that they want to? And they should come up, I guess, to the front and ask a question so we can hear what they're saying.
Well, I'll ask the group, but they look pretty silent right now.
She covered a lot of ground. That's pretty fantastic stuff.
Come on up here then, sir.
So people in Zoom, type in your questions.
We do have one question here. What has Susie learned about the ET's healing and their capacity to intervene for health of others? Can you address that?
Okay, I'll start with the second part of the question. They can intervene to a certain extent depending on what we've come here to do and what we've come here to experience. For example, I had a rather horrific car accident at age 19, and the experience I describe at the beginning of my book, where my car is lifted off the ground at age 20 and I have some missing time, I was actually given some healing and some implants to correct a balance problem that had developed from injuries. I'd had 3 fractured vertebrae and severe whiplash and other injuries. So they actually took me on board to help me. But they were quite almost tearful, if I can put it that way. There were no tears coming down their faces, but they were emitting the feeling of tearfulness to me that they couldn't do more. They were not permitted to do more. There was a limit to what they could do. I think humans have the expectation that they should come down and fix our planet, fix our environment, fix all our ecological disasters, and they have the ability to do much of that, but that's up to us to do it. But yes, they have a deep understanding of healing, and they use phenomenal technology in healing, which I talk about in my technology speeches. And since I gave that speech at the Congress, I've come across, been approached by scientists and medical people with a lot more information about what's being developed along the lines of what I spoke about that I've seen on craft. And there's a lot more technology, which will go in a second book that I haven't talked about. So they have this understanding of consciousness and the power of the mind, power of mind over matter to heal. And it's interesting that as a 12-year-old, I left my body as the grey part of the dual identity that I carry, and went on board a craft and took part in a healing session with people with cancer, children with cancer. So they use light, they use energy that we don't have a fuller understanding of yet. And they talked to me when I was in my 30s about how we can get sustenance from plants that is temporary sustenance that will see us over several days of quite some time of going without food, just absorbing this form of energy from the plants, which we have not yet discovered. But just the other day, I was reading on the internet and saw that we have now realized that there are forms of energy that plants emit that we can actually tap into. So here we have this understanding beginning to unfold and develop. They have a phenomenal understanding of different forms of healing, and I believe that some of the technology that's coming out now is based on some of the technology, advanced technology I've seen on craft. And I've had medical people approach me in the States at the Congress to say, we are trying to do exactly what you've just described, but we're in the kindergarten stages of it. But that's where we want to go. So yes, they have whole ships with massive, what I call ET hospitals on them, and they have different things that meet humans halfway. So they have technology that they have specifically developed to use with us on craft, and they stretch experiences. When you come on craft, they stretch our knowledge and our understanding and our capabilities to be able to use this technology, because we're like a microcosm of the macrocosm of humanity. What we can do as a cross-section of experiences, the rest of humanity will be able to do. And what we can't do, they're likely not to be able to do either. So this is how they have been preparing us for their technology. Because if we just walked straight into their technology, our minds would be blown. So they have developed interim, in between bridging technology, which is some of the stuff that experiencers have seen and used. And much of it is to do with healing.
Go for it, Grant.
Mark, I have a question for Suzy.
Go ahead, Grant.
Suzy, thanks for taking the time to talk to the group here. You
Grant.
once told me a story that I would like you maybe to put on the record. You're talking about healing. I've studied a thing called rapid image cycling, which is used by the Bankston healing method, where you're flipping images. And two of the kids from the Ariel School case in 1994 talked about the beings using these very rapid images to get messages across. And you have a story that you told me once about being in a theater. Can you tell that story about them using these environmental images and how they portrayed these things to you with this rapid image thing?
Yep, thanks, Grant. We were in an auditorium type situation, and there was a large screen up the front. There were humans there who were in the chain of communication and command along with the Greys. And they said that we were to prepare ourselves. We were going to be shown something that would affect us. So we had to bring our vibes up, if I can put it that way, prepare ourselves, strengthen our aura, if you want to call it that. And they then began putting on screen images that would, you know, come one every 3 seconds or so. Pretty horrific images of earth changes and terrible devastation. And they would speed it up a little, speed it up a little, speed it up a little, until you had multiple images per second. So the screen just basically became a blur. But because of our training throughout life, we were able to somehow, using our consciousness and our understanding, absorb every single image into our being and our consciousness until tears were streaming down our faces. We were in an extremely distressed state at this blur of tragedy and chaos that we were presented with. And then one of the Greys just came forward, and with his mind, he just put what I referred to as a blanket over us. So he put a blanket of calm, so that we would still retain memory of the images, we would still retain memory of the emotional and intellectual impact, but we would could center ourselves in such a way that we could look at it logically, we could look at it with clarity, and the emotions wouldn't get in the way. That was the big thing that he was concerned about. So yes, many times they will show you things because time is limited on a craft. They are processing, if I can put it that way, thousands of people on any one night on a big craft, bringing people in, taking them away. And time is short, so they use some of their skills that they have the ability to do with consciousness and telepathy and technology to shorten it down. But of course, you have to be trained throughout your life to be able to appreciate that and utilize it.
Thank you, Susie. I'm going to go to 2 questions online, and then I'm going to come back and poll our room here. So Art, you've got a couple questions, and I'm going to go to Marcel. So I'm going to unmute you, Art, and you have the floor, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Brad. First of all, honestly, Susie, it's an honor to meet you. I've been a fan of yours for some reason, a connection. I'm a lifelong experiencer, as maybe Mitzi and stuff like that may have known a little bit. But I have your book, and there's a lot to it, obviously. It meant a lot to me because it actually answered a lot of questions. So I just want to thank you for being a part of this moment, a moment for all of us, and to Mark and to Brad. And I noticed something, Susie, during your presentation. Telepathy and stuff like that, fine. Probably a lot of us have that. But during your channeling, during your presentations, you said something that was interesting. It was on your planet. Do you channel? Are you aware of channeling during your presentations?
No, I don't channel as such in the conventional meaning of the word. First of all, thank you for your kind words, Art. I feel very privileged. If you have gained something from my book, I'm very pleased. I don't channel as such, but I describe in the book how the Greys have taught the communicators, the ones who are out there doing the public speaking, to couch things. And it's just like a natural flow of what you've experienced coming in as you're speaking and describing. And as we've been taught to do this quite naturally. I don't concentrate on what I say or how I say it. It's just, I guess, a lot of people say to me, when you talk, it's kind of unlocks something in my mind. And that's certainly what they told us would happen. They said, you know, we could say the fox runs quickly, and some people will only hear the word fox and it will open up something in their mind, and some will hear quickly and it'll open up something different. That is the way they described it on the craft. So when I started to have people telling me that this was happening, it was confirmation to me of what they told me many years ago.
Well, thank you. That makes total sense. Second question, Brad, I have to you, Susie, is you mentioned the term mantid, okay, once during your presentation, and I was blessed also in a certain situation to have met a mantid. I had no clue in the world what I was looking at. But what are your impressions of the mantid in this complex context scenario, this incredibly complex phenomenon that we're experiencing? What are your feelings what is their role in your mindset?
Well, I can only speak of what I have experienced, and that is the mantis beings on board craft, what I call behind the greys. The greys are the front guys. They're the interfaces. They've had a bad rap. They've got a job to do. They do it well. That's why they were employed in this agenda, so to speak, to do it. The mantis are the facilitators and the planners. So a lot of the planning that goes on is formulated by them, implemented by the greys and others. So I've also seen them involved very heavily in healing, and I've experienced some quite phenomenal healing situations because I've had quite a lot of illness and accidents in my life. And you know, my chiropractor says someone wants you alive, Susie, because you keep bouncing back. And so yes, they are involved in a lot of the healing organisation of healing sessions that happen on the craft, and often involving thousands of humans whose lives have been touched by illness and disease or by the environment, but who are able to have some assistance to keep them going to achieve their goals. So there's a huge amount of compassion from these entities. I remember the first time of seeing one, he was seated and he was still taller than me. And it was quite overwhelming, but the overriding feeling from him was of grace, high intelligence, high vibe, and extremely compassionate.
Susie, thank you. It confirms much of that experience.
Thank you,
we appreciate your wisdom.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Art. I'm going to go on to Maurice, if I can find you here. Where are you hiding? Just a moment. Maurice, one more? Ah, there we are. Okay, sorry, Maurice. Give me a moment here while I keep on clicking.
How's that?
Okay, we're good to go now, Maurice.
Okay. Recently, David Wilcock had a School of Ascended Mysteries, and he was getting information from whistleblowers, aliens, all kinds of individuals. And he mentioned in his program that there was a kill shot coming that would bring about the ascension. Have the Greys any understanding of this?
Can you explain to me what he means by a kill shot?
Apparently the sun is supposed to radiate a huge, massive flume of radiation, which will heat up the planet to a point where it will melt the rocks on it. In the Ascension School, they were speaking about an alien race that were blue, and they would be approaching people to take them to a place of safety when this would happen. Is there anything of that knowledge remotely mentioned to you?
No, none of that has been mentioned to me at all. The most that I have been told is that they use the term, we will discover something so bad that it will completely throw us. And they described it as humans harming humans. And they said, humans harm humans all the time. So we've become quite, what's the word? almost accepting of that kind of behavior on the planet because it happens so frequently.
Mm-hmm.
So if something is going to happen that's humans harming humans, that completely throws humanity and wants us to protest on the streets and shake us to the core, it must be something absolutely terrible that we discover that a sector of mankind has been doing to the rest of us.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I have been told that that will be a massive turning point.
Yes.
And this event will happen, this discovery will take place and be exposed, and it will shake us to the core.
It's sort of like an alliance.
I can't even imagine what that could be.
Yeah, maybe it's an alliance of some kind. Anyways, I do want to touch a subject of medicine, healing. Is there such a piece of equipment that the aliens have shown you that could be possibly described as a medical bed? They place you on it and they reanimize your body. If there's
sorry, what was a medical? Sorry.
It's a medical bed.
Yes, yeah,
reanimizes your body.
Yep, I talk about that in my speeches. We have got a medical bed now that's used in med schools to train students, etc. But they are able to put you on this bed, put this beam down on your body, and if they want to see just your bones, then within the parameters of that beam, of whatever it is, they will only see your bones, or they touch a screen and then you can see all your organs, etc. And I've sat up on my elbows on the bed and looked into my abdomen and seen things gurgling and pumping. So yes, they have that. They have handheld versions of it, which I've also talked about, but they also can bring your organs out in holographic form, and they can work on them, they can go into them, they can go into the tiniest atom within your body, and it'll come up on a screen.
I knew it. Susie, no wonder you look so good.
I wish they'd use it on me a little bit more at the moment, actually.
I understand that. Okay, I'm done. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Maurice.
Okay, I'm going to just mute Maurice here and ask these folks in the room, is there something else you'd like to ask?
Animal mutilation.
Okay, Susie, we've got a question. I don't know whether you've addressed this in the book or not, but about animal mutilations, and is there a reason behind all of this?
Actually, I have never, ever in my memory had any discussion with any Greys about animal mutilation. They have not mentioned it. It has not been part of my 64 years of experience.
Fair enough. Any more questions here? Yeah, okay, we've got another. This guy that keeps on writing books is coming back to ask another question.
Susie, you talked briefly about the interaction with your son. Can you maybe touch a little bit on the reincarnation aspect of this whole thing? About, you know, because some people will say, well, there's sort of like the Greys out there, the bad guys, and then people will talk about the idea that they don't believe they're from here, that these are actually their family. So can you get into that reincarnation aspect, the relationship between you and your son, and how people may be cycling in and actually doing the whole thing where we're actually, it's a soul contract, where we're on a mission and we're working with the beings?
Yep, thank you. That's you, is it, Grant? Yes, firstly, looking at the, lost track now, the last bit. Oh, well, I'll start with my son then, and move on to that, if I can remember the last bit. So I met the soul of my son when I was 8. I was introduced to him on the craft, just briefly for those people who haven't read the book. I was introduced to him on the craft as a ball of blue light. And I was taken to a room where I was left on my own with this ball of blue light. I was told I was going to meet another child, which is why I went to the room with them. So I was quite disappointed when they came in, not with a child, but with a ball of light like a beach ball. then they left the room, and we sort of learnt to communicate. We communicated with each other. So I'm an 8-year-old girl, and I've been told this is going to be your son. When you're older, you'll get married and you'll have a child, and this soul will inhabit that child. And we want to get to know that soul now, because you're going to be working closely together as the years go by. The relationship has to be good. Let's see if it works. And it did. It worked fine. I met and communicated with and spent time with that blue ball of light for all the rest of my life, until such time as he was born. And I have memory of what I call the merging process, where I was taken on board craft, quite heavily pregnant, and the soul of my son entered my body and entered the baby's body within me. So this was a pre-arranged thing, that this soul had volunteered to come in and be a part of my life and me of his. But more importantly, that when the time comes for him to step up as a third waver and make changes in this world, along with thousands or millions of others, that I will be there to support him of that. At this point in time, he's a global trade analyst. So there's that high analytical skill. He has 3 degrees, and is a very psychic young man who uses it in his day-to-day life as a natural thing, not as something that really stands out, but just part of his general wisdom in life. So, Grant, what was the rest of the question?
Yeah, it's Brad here again. I had a note passed to me. One of the issues that we didn't address was the soul contract prior to arrival here on the planet.
Okay.
Yeah, the reincarnation, and then working together with the aliens was, if you can elaborate on that.
Yep, okay, so soul contract, I had some pretty overwhelming memories at some stage, like a flashback of an experience when I was a ball of light, and with me in front of this panel, if you like to call it, what I call the universal governing body of this planet, who oversees the incarnation of souls and tasks here. I was in front of them with the blue ball of light, who was to become my son. So basically, we were both having a job interview. Have we got the right stuff to be able to do this task? Are we willing to do it? And then the decision was made as a consensus of souls between all of us. So there's a little take on free will that's a little bit different to what most people have. That we decide, no, this was a consensus between them and us and this other soul that was with me, who became my son, of whether we were up to the job, and whether at that point in time, having been drawn towards this life and drawn towards this meeting from what Rudy, Dr. Schild and I call the field of consciousness, where the souls reside, we had got to know what was expected in this life. And we were then asked, okay, if you're going to go into this life, that's good, we think you can do it, but there's an add-on. Would you be willing to work in a particular program, to a particular agenda with alien species? Yes or no? Was okay, yes, I'll do that. The blue ball of light was yes, okay. And then immediately we were gone and found ourselves on a craft. And that's when our prior education began as souls, before I incarnated, many, many years, of course, before my son. And the other part of the question was about people who believe that they're Arcturian or whatever. I can't speak for that because, it's not my experience, but I do know that we bring forward with us memories of past lives. And we are universal souls, not human or earth souls. We're universal souls. We may choose to lead a number of lives here, but we can go anywhere. And we've probably all led lives as other species on other planets. As to whether they have soul memory of other planets, or whether they feel that they are some kind of hybrid, a physical hybrid in this life, I'm not sure. People may differ on that.
Excellent. I've got a question, and this gets back to one of the videos that I saw on YouTube. It was, I guess, a movie producer. I don't know whether it was one of your sons or a close friend, that was following you and I believe your younger son around Australia and New
No,
Zealand.
you're mixing me up with Mary Rodwell from Australia, who is not an experiencer.
Okay, I'm sorry. I will take that all back and move on to, oh, we have another question here. Oh, well, here we're gonna get a gal to ask you a question.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to know if they've given you specific instruction on how to raise your vibrational level. Because I hear people talk about this, oh, it's love, it's blah, 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 blah. But that's not good enough. Like, if you consciously want to do that, how do you do it?
Well, I'd have to say that how I might do it here as Susie Hansen is somewhat different from how I might do it on a craft. Because as many experiencers will tell you, the environment on a craft is very different. You're surrounded by what I call the big brain, and the interconnection that goes on with all of the ETs there to that big, what I call a big brain. So it's much easier to raise your vibration and expand your aura when you're on a craft. And in many cases, when time is short and they want you to do a particular activity, as you are walking along the corridor, the grey in front of you or whatever will be saying to the group of humans you're with, you know, start up now, like, okay, expand, expand, and that kind of thing. So you know that you are expanding your awareness and consciousness. You're shifting a gear, you're getting into the groove you need to get into to work on the craft. And that's very different from here. But there are some things that humans do that we do that they actually teach differently on the craft. And when I've actually mentioned this to a number of people who are yoga devotees or in New Age people working with energy, they're horrified and they say, no, 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 that's not how you do it. You don't do it like that. But I can only say what they teach us, and that is they don't teach us as many who meditate do. They don't teach us to go inside. They teach us to expand out. They teach us to reach out. And I describe an exercise on the craft where they said, okay, you have to reach out to see how far you can expand out in this room with a lot of people in it. And you have to pluck something out of their consciousness or their aura and be able to tell which person it is and what it is, and they have to verify it. So it was like a little exercise for humans to do, and you had to expand outwards, expand your consciousness and your auric field out to encompass someone else and be able to read it. Now, effectively, this is what a lot of mediums do, and clairvoyance as well. They have talked about the auric field, that we see the flare, the light around the body, but on one occasion they showed us the light within the body, the flares, this whole other energy field within the body that correlates. And they talk about the different levels of the energy field going out. And again, this is somewhat different from what yogis and people who meditate will tell you. So I've kept quite quiet about that one because I've been tramped on a few times when I've mentioned it. Maybe it's something I should put in the next book then, I don't know.
Okay, we've got another question here from a young man. I think he's a first timer here, so just hold on.
Hello, hi there, Susie. Thank you so much for giving us your time. I just had a quick question about sort of the spirituality aspect of these experiences that you've had. We sort of talked about spirituality a little bit and sort of how important it is and sort of how much importance there is in sort of UFO or alien experiences. I was wondering, why is there such a big importance on spirituality, and, you know, how much importance do you place your spirituality in UFO sort of experiences like that, and how much should there be?
Okay, well, I would have to say that spirituality is everything. we hear a lot about consciousness. You know, this is a word that's bandied around at the moment, but I actually have to wonder how many people actually know what consciousness is or can even imagine it. But if you talk about spirituality, which is being a good, wholesome human who cares about others and cares about creatures and animals on the planet, people understand that. On a craft, spirituality is everything. There is technology that you cannot connect to unless you carry a certain frequency. I will say that. That is something that is going in my next book. It's something I haven't talked about too much because I think there'll be people who won't like that concept. But there is some technology that you can't use if your vibe is bad. So this is why when you come on the craft, they say expand, expand, build it up, rise up is one they often say, rise up, and we know what they mean. So it's like cleanse yourself away and get prepared, you know, for the day's task. In our own evolution, why should we worry about spirituality? Because we won't survive without it. We've survived for centuries with some form of spirituality, but hey, look how much smaller the population was way back. We've now got a massive population on the planet, and if too many of those people are lacking in spirituality and compassion and care for the planet themselves and other people and our companion species, then we're sunk. How do we combat that? And the other thing, of course, is we are being prepared for advanced technology, because if we come in contact with ET face to face one day openly on the planet, most people's minds would be blown. You know, I have people say to me, oh, I wish I could meet an ET. You're so lucky. No, it's actually not that simple. If you stood in their presence and you were not prepared for it, you would suffer, not in a sense of being harmed, but it would be overwhelming. And those who've been on a craft have been on a craft for many years, and we've grown up with it. It's part of our life and our being now. So they will bring wondrous technology, and that technology, as we are doing with some of our own already, can be used in a multitude of ways. It can be used to help humanity and help the planet, or it can be used to harm. So much of our technology is used to harm, or is used for greed and monetary gain, fame, fortune, all of those awful vices. So the spirituality concept is everything. How can we evolve and reach our cosmic neighbors unless we have attained a cosmic courtesy? And the other thing that goes hand in hand with spirituality is integrity. And one of the reasons why I have over the last 2 years considered leaving the UFO field altogether and never being involved in it again is because of the lack of integrity with so many people. People who take your material, who bastardize that material and represent it as something different with their name on it. That material carries a vibe that the person who needs to speak about it carries. Experiencers know their life, they know their experience, they know what they need to say. If someone takes it away and uses it out of context, it doesn't have the same meaning. It does not reach the same people. And I've had people in an interview recently say to me, oh, you want ownership of the material. No, I want the right to present my material, not to have it stolen by researchers and used differently and presented differently, so the effect is lost. And what that material could have achieved is gone. And then when I talk about it, I'm told you've plagiarized their material. These are some of the issues that experiencers face. It's very hard. It's not an easy road. It really isn't. So,
wow.
I'm not being harsh. I'm just being honest. And integrity is everything. We are creating history. We are making a paper trail of knowledge that we are adding to. And that knowledge that experiencers have is precious. And they need to have usage of it. You can call it ownership. I share my material willingly, so I feel very agitated when people tell me I want ownership. I don't get a cent. If people give me some money for speaking, I'm very grateful and I use it for the next trip or whatever. I don't go and buy flash things. My life is to share what I know, and I'm not saying I know everything. I'm saying, here's my bit, we can piece it together with someone else's. Like I have with Steve Boucher in Canada, who has seen the same piece of technology I've seen. What a wonderful thing to talk to another experiencer who can describe it exactly. Is that not corroboration? Is that not the evidence that the skeptics are looking for? Is that not enough to equal all of these so-called whistleblowers and military people who've seen something in the sky? Is it not equal to that in importance and value?
Yeah, Susie, I don't think you have to apologize at all for integrity and making that part of a whole being, because that's what it's all about. So no, and we applaud you for being open, transparent, honest. That may bother a few people, but no, not those of us who want to continue to develop that awareness and sense of well, being able to lead a fuller life. I just want to poll the room one last time.
Brad, it's after 9 o'clock, and I want to actually let Susie have the last word and just sort of wrap things up, because her time is very valuable. She's given us more than 2 hours of her time by even talking earlier. In my world, she is an absolute hero, a person that has bared her soul. She's brought forward information. She's put her family at risk. She's put herself at risk. She's delivered the messages that she's here to do. She's done everything possible to front. And out of respect, it's time to end this now. But I appreciate there may be somebody else that wants to ask another question. But I think out of due respect to Susie, she has given so much tonight and passed on so much information that, quite frankly, it's stunning to actually listen to all this. My reality has been shattered several times over the last 15 years anyways, but it just continues on as we grow and learn more as we go through this. So if you wouldn't mind, Brad, I think what I'd like to say is, I'd like to say right now, thank you to you, Susie, and for all you've done for all of us, and you continue to do so. I thank you for what you've done, exposing your family to these people that are unkind beings, and to actually help advance us. You've sacrificed and done the things that are important and that will be remembered. This is something I talked to you at Phoenix about, that this is you representing yourself to us, and you show up very well, and I thank you for it.
Thank you, Mark. That's very kind of you. I have really enjoyed this afternoon and really enjoyed talking to the people and answering questions, and I'm happy to always answer questions and emails if people send me messages. Sometimes I'm a little slow because I get a lot of them, and I've had a lot of life things happening, and got a wedding this weekend. So, but if people want to ask me questions, please do. Please contact me through Messenger, Facebook, on either of my websites, ufolksnz.org.nz, or through communicatorlink.com. And eventually you will hear from me after a little space, probably. But I wish you all very well on your trip through life. And if anything that I've ever said or written has helped someone, I'm very grateful.
You have, and thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Susie. We appreciate your time, and
thank you, Brad.
Enjoy the afternoon over there.
Thank you, and you enjoy your evening. Thanks. Goodbye to everyone, and have a lovely Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Mitzi. Bye, Mark.
Much love.
Much love to you, Mark. Thank you.
And that's a wrap, Mark.
What a great night, people. I mean, what an amazing discussion. I mean, I'm going to watch this again myself to pick up the things that were discussed by Susie, and so amazing. I could only imagine someone who's the first visit to our meetings, and they go through and listen to this amazing discussion. It, obviously quite advanced, but what can you say? But wow. Thanks again. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Okay, bye, Mark.
Good night.
Tell Mark, Jets are winning 4-1.
Jets are winning 4-1, Mark.
Oh my gosh, really?
For crying out loud, I taped the game. I was going to watch it.
Yeah, well, now you can go out and play golf.
Yeah. Much love to everyone back in Winnipeg. Thank you for attending, and hopefully we'll have guests somewhere close to this nature again. I don't know how, but she's pretty amazing. I'm sure you all agree. Anyways, good night, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.